Happy Victory Day, guys. Happy Victory Day. And by Victory Day, I mean the end of the Nazi regime. 80% of the Germans, Nazis, that were effectively killed, destroyed, defeated, were done so on the Eastern Front. It was done by the Soviets. Now, the European leaders may want to take a different tact and take a different opinion on all of this. Doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, reality is what reality is. And they may not necessarily want to give the Russians credit, but they earned it in blood. And, I've said it before, I find this day to be somewhat sacred. The world powers, the US, France, England, Russia, China, the world powers came together in order to beat back the monsters that effectively was trying to take over the globe. And it is childish. It is sad. It is ashamed, or we should be ashamed of ourselves for not being there at that Victory Day parade. It is a sacred day. It is a sacred honor. It is something that we as a world should celebrate. We were able to put aside our differences as countries, and Lord knows we had differences. Stalin, oh my God, right? Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Winston Churchill. We will fight them on the beaches. We will fight them in the kitchens. We'll fight them on the shores. We'll fight them in the saunas. We'll fight them while we're getting mani-pedis. We will fight the Germans. That famous speech by Winston Churchill. I don't remember if he put in mani-pedis, but you get my point, right? The world came together in order to destroy monsters in the real, fullest sense of the word. I understand that not everyone celebrates this. And I think it's a shame and a travesty that they don't. I understand that there were radical excesses when the Soviets went into Berlin, when the Soviets finally blew up that statue, when Hitler took his own life. But I think we should focus on the fact of a larger point. The Nazis took over all of Europe. They literally changed the map of Europe to German. And if it wasn't for the sacrifice of blood that the Soviets shed, all of Europe would be speaking German today. If it wasn't for Hitler feeling himself and believing he could take down the Soviet Union, despite the fact that they didn't have the logistics, despite the fact that they didn't have the supply lines and everything else, they still thought the moment that we go in, they'll collapse. And just like the US using Nazis to knock over the government of Ukraine and using them as a battering ram, they were wrong. They were wrong. If Hitler instead would have attacked Britain with all force, Brits would be speaking German right now. He didn't do that. It was a flaw. It was a mistake. And of course, when Japan bombed Pearl Harbor and Franklin Delano Roosevelt gave that famous speech and Hitler immediately declared war, okay, again, another mistake. You've now brought America into the war when really America would have only been fighting the Japanese. It is a phenomenal bit of history, to put it mildly. And the parades are taking place right now. Well, at the very least, were taking place on Red Square. I would kill to be there. It is an amazing thing. And for some reason, it bothers me that we don't celebrate it as a world. I got an email from a gentleman who was trying to point out why not everyone celebrated it. And I asked my ex, who's Austrian, hey, do you celebrate Victory Day? And she says, what's that? And I said, that's the day where the Red Army, working with the rest of the world, beat back the German menace and destroyed fascism, Nazism. And of course, her thing was the rapes. Now, I understand why some people look at it in those terms, especially if you're in Austria or if you're in German and they say every German woman was raped and every apparently Austrian was raped. But I think what they miss is that you invaded the Soviet Union, not the other way around. You murdered 30 million Russians, Soviets, not the other way around. You murdered 10 million Jews. I forget how many millions of Chinese, hundreds of thousands of Americans, hundreds of thousands of Brits. This was a war that was provoked that Europe didn't want, which is why they were appeasing Hitler in the first place, because 20 years after the first war, there was no appetite in Europe for another war. And yet, there was no choice. And the world came together and destroyed Nazism. The truth of the matter is, while it's not right what happened in regards to the rapes, it's in context to the overarching point that the Nazis was trying to take it all. And in trying to take it all, didn't look at Russians and Soviets in the same way that they looked at the French and the Brits. Hell, Hitler even looked at the Brits as brothers on some level. They looked at the Soviets as dogs, as animals, as wrecks that was only there for extermination so they can get Lebensraum, living space. So looking at it in that context, there was no, okay, I surrender. You're going to die, and you're going to die miserably. You had to stand there and fight. And for the longest time, many of the Soviets thought, well, we have all sorts of space, so we can always go back and retreat and retreat. And Stalin gave this speech not a step back. It is one of the most badass speeches in the history of speeches. And whatever Stalin's faults, and Lord knows he had many, mass murder, all that stuff. But in regards to dealing with that war, there's this speech that he gave that it is hard to wrap your head around the gravity of that speech. If a war of annihilation is what you want, then war of annihilation is what you would get. And that's what it was on the Eastern Front, a war of annihilation. It wasn't like on the Western Front. It was different. I'm not saying that they didn't go through hell and perdition. They did. I'm just saying the way the Germans looked at the Soviets was radically different. And the war that was being fought on the Eastern Front was radically different. We should celebrate that as a world. Unfortunately, we're not. Unfortunately, we're not. I want to bring in my guest, though. I am joined with the man himself, Laith Marouf. Laith, how you doing today? My voice is a little screwed up. I had a miserable night. How you doing, man? You doing okay?
Doing good. Thank you very much for having me, Jamal.
Oh, man, always good to have you. Laith Marouf, he's an award-winning multimedia producer and media policy law consultant focused on issues of liberation and decolonization from indigenous nations to Arab peoples and building broadcasting capabilities for misrepresented and underrepresented communities around the world. Laith, where can people find you? It's Free Palestine TV, correct?
Yes, the website is freepalestine.video, and we're on most social media platforms. We're on X at TV Free Palestine, and we're doing field reporting from Palestine and Lebanon in English almost on a daily basis.
Oh, very cool, man. Very cool. I have to get to a story that has been bubbling up that I saw this morning, and I want to get your take on it. I am, I will tell you, very skeptical of this story. And I suspect Iran, based on their behavior, is very skeptical also. So it's been reported that Trump has cut ties with Netanyahu, that Trump felt disrespected, Of course, Walsh was an Israeli spy and had been working behind the scenes in order to get basically attack plans against Iran behind Trump's back. The reporting is that Trump didn't necessarily like that. And he felt that Israel is, let's say, taking him for granted and disrespecting him and making him look as if he's a junior partner as opposed to the president. Now, I will tell you, before Trump got into office, I said to myself, or I think I even said it on air, that Donald Trump is not going to accept the same position that Joe Biden accepted, where Joe Biden continues to look weak and everything else. By the same token, I still remember Joe Biden saying, oh my God, Israel better not go into Rafah. They're going to Rafah. Oh my God, Israel better not do this. And he's like whining. And yet, here's more weapons. Here's more bombs. Here's more bullets. Here's more money. Here's more political support. So for me, that could fit within the same context of Trump. Oh, we're cutting ties. Here's more bombs. Here's more bullets. Here's more weapons, etc. Give me your take on this story, though. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you see this differently. What's your thoughts?
Well, it's hard to imagine that there's actually a fight between Netanyahu and Trump, given the fact that if we look at the imperial order on a global scale, there was always two wings, the liberal wing and the conservative wing of imperialists. And the liberal wing where, the Democrats with the king of Jordan and, the Egyptians and the whole Muslim Brotherhood, Arab quote unquote spring, where I would call the Arab autumn, plot to have, democratic Islamists like the Christian Democrats in Germany that replaced the Nazis, right?
Right.
That's the one wing. And the other wing in the conservative imperial order includes like the Saudis, basically the Wahhabi death squads, the ultra-Zionist of Netanyahu, and the Trumps. And we saw a kind of bloodless civil war happen between these two wings over the last 10 years. And the coup of Netanyahu and the Saudis, the Wahhabis, basically against the Obama's project of the Arab Spring. And as we see right now, without the ultra-Zionists of Netanyahu and their ability to shield fascist white supremacy in its Christian and secular form by giving that shield of accusations of anti-Semitism, and the ability of the Jewish white supremacists, aka the Zionists, to publicly genocide and rape, as we see the second video of another Palestinian prisoner being raped in Israeli detention, and beat up students, as we saw 2 days ago in the Columbia University, choke them almost to death. Yeah. Right? This is without the Zionists normalizing this and providing a shield for the Christian and secular white supremacists, the rise of Trump and his existence and the existence of all these neo-Nazi, neo-fascist white supremacists that are taking over all of Europe and the West wouldn't happen. So it's a joke. Trump and the Christian and secular white supremacists in the United States cannot exist without the shield of the Zionists, the approval stamp of the Zionists that's saying these are the saviors of Judaism and Christianity. Without the Zionists giving that approval stamp on Trump, he wouldn't exist.
Fair enough. And of course, he's been completely obsequious to Israel and their wants, even bastardizing the First Amendment, even deporting people out the country that's supposed to be into the country, getting rid of students. All of that stuff has been true. Even the legislation that they were going to put, the anti-boycott Israel legislation that they were trying to push through Congress, agreed. There is a few data points, though. One data point is this. This was something that took place where the U.S. effectively capitulated to the Houthis And Israel
So,
apparently
does that
didn't know anything about it, with Huckabee coming out saying, look, if the U.S. wants to, we can do what we want. We don't need Israel permission to do it. This is Trump responding to a reporter who's saying, hey, what if they continue to fire missiles at Israel? Are you, is this truce still in effect?
the Houthis are backing down? We're seeing conflicting reports that they plan on continuing to attack Israel in support of Gaza. Does that change the equation?
No, I don't know about that, frankly, but I know one thing: they want nothing to do with us, and they've let that be known through all of their surrogates.
So effectively what Trump is saying is, look, if they need to attack Israel, fair enough, they just better not attack us, which, according to the reports, caught Israel off guard, where they were like, whoa, what the hell? You're supposed to continue to kill civilians in Yemen. Here's another data point. Donald Trump is apparently allowing, here it is. Donald Trump is apparently allowing Saudi Arabia to build nuclear power plants. Now, the very act of saying allow sounds funny to me because they're supposed to be a sovereign country, but whatever. But they've dropped the demand that Joe Biden had that they needed to normalize relations with Israel. And Trump says, okay, we don't need to do that. Build your power plant. Are these, and one last point, AIPAC doesn't believe that Donald Trump can get any deal through Congress without their support. And they have started agitating to members of Congress in order to effectively block any deal that Donald Trump may get with either Iran or, for that matter, Saudi Arabia. Now, again, I'm very skeptical of this, and I'll explain why in a moment. But does any of that change your mind? I mean, they even put out a video going after Trump, effectively saying, hey, Donald Trump needs to, for all intents and purposes, have a war with Iran and shouldn't accept any sort of deal short of the Libyan model.
To have a nuclear weapon.
President Trump has always been clear.
We must never allow a regime that chants death to America or death to Israel to obtain a nuclear weapon.
All right. Does any of this alter your point of view? Like, meaning, does any of these data points give you a perspective of, okay, well, maybe there's personal beef in the way that Donald Trump has his ego being the most important thing in the world to him, and he feels humiliated by what seemingly looks like Israel leading the U.S. as opposed to the U.S. leading Israel?
Well, look, the last American president to actually have a confrontation with the Zionists and do something, prioritize American foreign policy and interest over Zionist interest was George Bush Sr. And that was after the United States had occupied basically all the Gulf oil fields at the end of the first Gulf War and was trying to jam a peace treaty between the Arabic states and the Zionist colony, and even offering to give Syria back the whole Golan Heights and all of that. And the Israelis went ahead and started bombarding Lebanon, and he withheld the shipments of weapons, George Bush Sr. And that led to him being the only president in modern times not to have two terms. Okay, so they forced him out of the presidency for attempting to coerce the Zionists into peace. Okay, so no, this is not going to happen. I think one thing that we need to understand about the battle with Yemen is that most probably we will hear over the next few months that actually the American aircraft carriers in the region lost more than 20 F-18s, not one, not two, not three, that they have admitted, okay? And that the aircraft carriers that are nuclear powered were close to be blown up. Okay, this is why the Truman is rushing back now to dry dock to be fixed. Okay, so the United States pushed as far as it can to defend the Zionist colony from the Yemeni armed forces. And it almost led to the first and only ever sinking explosion of a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier. So the United States had no choice but to withdraw here to save its face. I mean, look, if Yemen can sink these aircraft carriers, what is the chance of the United States against China or Russia, right? And I want to say one last thing. By the way, you are muted still, but one last thing here, and I know a little bit ranted there, but the United States announcing that it's going to stop bombing Yemen doesn't mean that that's true. What is going to happen is that the Zionist colony is going to pretend that it is bombing Yemen, and American jets will be still bombarding Yemen on behalf of the Zionist colony, and all of it being covered up as if it's the Zionist colony doing it. This is, I think, the extent of actually even this ceasefire between Yemen and the United States.
Okay, two things. Why do you think it's 26? And why do you think they nearly sunk an aircraft carrier? I don't even think Yemen or the Ansar Allah said as much. Like, where do you explain that for me?
Yeah, I said over 20. I didn't say 26, but I said
I'm
over
sorry,
20
over
at
20.
least. Yeah. So this is because the actual, from sources that I have within the Yemeni armed forces and government, what they're telling us is that those jets were exploded on the deck of the aircraft carrier when it was hit. These jets were ready to take off, were hit on the deck. There was huge explosions on the deck of the aircraft carrier, and there was more missiles coming. This is what they talk when they talk to Americans about that maneuver that the aircraft carrier had to do, which led to even more of the jets that are on the deck to fall off. So in total, there's a whole squadron basically lost of F-18s. It's not a small number, and we'll get to know this as the secrets come out over the next few months.
Wow. In the other case, where Donald Trump is effectively saying, okay, we capitulate, we'll stop, providing you don't target US ships. I guess my thing is, I'm skeptical of this also. And part of the reason I'm skeptical of this is because I don't know if the US has taken this position in order to create this kind of thing of, okay, if Israel hits Iran, well, we can say, well, we didn't have anything to do with it. This, the playbook of Pathway to Persia, or Which Path to Persia, kind of plays this out, saying that the US takes a step back, allows Israel to do it. And mind you, they can't do it without our help or assistance. But we still may say, oh my God, we had no idea that they were going to do that. I mean, and Iran seems to not believe it either. I mean, they have been escalating their rhetoric, and I don't think they're doing it for no reason. So, like this one, they said, we will open the gates of hell if Israel or the United States attack us. In another case, they're showing their technology. So they've been showing missile cities. They've been showing spy drones. And Iran wasn't doing this during negotiations. They started doing this after negotiations fell apart, which leads me to believe that they believe that an attack could be imminent, or at the very least is possible. How do you see that? I mean, do you see the reporting all of a sudden Trump cut ties with Netanyahu and Iran putting out this effectively war footage saying, don't test us at your own peril? Do you see these things related to one another? Iran doesn't seem to believe the cutting ties stuff.
You see, the reason that the US was using these aircraft carriers to attack Yemen, it was because the Gulf states, where especially Qatar, where the vast majority of American air power is stationed in the region, were scared that the Yemenis will retaliate if the jets from those fields were the ones bombarding them. And then you'll have Doha and Dubai and Abu Dhabi on flames, okay? All these glass towers just going down. It would have been a massacre for these fabricated states, right? So the US used these aircraft carriers and the Diego Garcia airfield in the Indian Ocean to conduct this bombardment campaign. Now, simultaneously, over the last 6 months, we saw the United States move a lot of the F-35s it has to Israel, okay? Not to Al Udeid in Qatar, but to Israel. And we can't account now for the vast majority of the F-35s that the US controls. We can't account to where they are. They're off radars and so on, but they are, from satellite images, they are now stationed in Israel. So what does this mean? This means that the United States will be conducting air bombardments of Yemen and of Iran if in eventual war, all camouflaged as if it's Israeli, because Israel doesn't have enough jets to conduct such campaigns. Even with the assassination of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah and the mass bombardment in those 24 hours of Lebanon, it was clear that NATO jets were involved because the Israelis didn't have enough jets to conduct those thousands of raids simultaneously. So this is what's going to happen, and I think everybody knows the game. Nobody's stupid. Neither the Ansarullah or the Yemeni government and or Iran are stupid and are going to be fooled.
You agree with me on this, that this is a bit of theater. This is a kabuki show where the U.S. is trying to clean its hands off of what is about to happen in regards to Iran. And Iran is perfectly aware that this attack is imminent. I mean, and that's the other thing, right? You get Hegseth saying, we will attack you at the time and place of our choosing. You get Netanyahu apparently saying something very similar. We will attack you at the time and place of our choosing. You get Donald Trump associating everything that happens with the Houthis with Iran. And you even get this breaking off of negotiations with this kind of maximalist demands that they know Iran would never accept. So do you think this was always in the cards? That the entire point of all of this was, we're going to pretend like we're negotiating, and then we're going to break off negotiations. We're going to create a context to justify an attack, wash our hands of it, and pretend as if it's Iran, Israel that's doing the attacks, when in all earnest, we are helping them and even working with them to do those attacks.
Well, look, the experiment that the Americans did in Yemen right now proved to them that the price of attacking Iran is going to be huge.
Yeah.
It's going to lead to mass death of American soldiers in the region. It will lead to mass destruction in the Zionist colony. As much as in Iran, it will lead to the disruption of oil and gas exports from the region. It will lead to the disruption of international trade traffic from Asia to Africa to Europe to the Americas. And so if we look at it, what would analysts, strategists give as options in front of an American president that wants to maintain the hegemony of the United States, wants to shore up its status as the sole hegemon? They will say to him, if you don't do such a thing, you will only see a retreat of the empire from that point on, right? And the other thing is that the United States has, if we couple this with all what we saw with the protectionist tariff wars that Trump created, we can understand that the US actually has an interest in disrupting international trade. China is dependent on oil and gas coming from the Gulf.
Right.
China is dependent on sending its exports to Africa, Europe, and the Americas for its economy. Okay? The United States wants to cut this trade as a long-term strategy in order to slow down the rise of China and its pace, right? So while it may look like it doesn't make sense that the United States is willing to have all the oil fields that it controlled for the last 80 years in the Gulf to be up in flames, from a capitalist point of view, it does make sense when you know that the United States has its own supply of gas and oil, and we saw it how it wanted to force even Europe to be dependent on that gas and oil with cutting it from Russia and the attack on Nord Stream 2 and so forth, and wants to force Europe and or Africa to start buying again from its products, or Latin America, as we see. And that can only happen with disrupting the flow of products outside from China to the rest of the world. And this is the strategy, it seems like.
Interesting. What do you say to people who make what they would consider to be irrational argument? That they would say, well, look, this is a bag that the president doesn't necessarily want to hold because it's unpredictable. And if that attack takes place, for one, they don't know that they can pacify Iran. They don't know that the response that Iran is going to make is not necessarily going to, let's say, change the context of the world in the same way that the Ukraine thing did. And what I mean by that is the US and Europe went with this idea that, well, of course, we can economically destroy Russia. Of course, we can damage them to the point where Ukraine may be able to create a strategic defeat on the battlefield. Russia's just Nigeria with snow. They're a gas can masquerading as a country. And they got it wrong. And even in the trade war, they got it wrong. And it's very possible that going after Iran, they're going to get it wrong. And that on some level, the president has to be aware of that, at the very least has to be in his mind. And so going after them may not necessarily be something he wants to do because of the unpredictable consequences of it. What do you say to that argument? Because that is the argument that people often use when they try to rationalize and say, well, there's no way Trump is going to do that.
You know, before we started this interview, I was listening to you talk about the commemorations of Victory Day.
Yeah.
And you look at what you mentioned there, the difference in how the Nazi Germans dealt with other Germanic or Latin peoples in Europe versus how they treated the Slavic peoples,
Yeah.
right? And any rational decision-making in terms of how they invaded the Soviet Union would have told you, don't do that, right? You have the history of before you Napoleon, before them, you got thousands of years of history of military conflict back and forth, east to west in Europe. And you know that the results, it's not like you can change the course of geography or history, right? So the number one driver that pushed Hitler to go that way is because he's a supremacist. He saw, honestly, both world wars were about who amongst the quote-unquote European white nations is the most supreme in the end. And we were lucky as human beings outside that category of whiteness that the Soviet Revolution happened in the middle of World War I, because the Russian elite and the Russian royal family were seeing themselves as white, first and foremost. They were intermarried into the Germans, into the Greeks, into whatever you want to, British royal family, all of that. All of them were intermarried. And if there was no Soviet Revolution, at the end of World War I or World War II, we would have all been culled in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. The Soviet Revolution created a schism and didn't allow the integration after the thousands of years of the Slavic people being the source of slavery in Europe. That's why their names, the word slave comes from Slavic. Were almost going to be integrated, and the Soviet Revolution stopped that integration. So today you have Jewish white supremacists and Christian white supremacists that see Zionism and this, God mandate given to them to rule over humanity. And they're willing to genocide openly, as we see in Gaza. They have normalized it to a point where I think, and obviously there's now been millions of Arabic people specifically in Libya, in Iraq, in Syria, in Yemen, in Sudan over the last 15 years, before even this genocide in Gaza, that have been culled in front of humanity in the name of this supremacy. So no, nothing is rational about this. It is going this way because our enemy is worse than the Nazis. Those who rule right now in the West are Zionists. The governments, the police, what's happening is we're even at the doors of having mass incarceration of Palestinian, Arab, and Muslim peoples in Europe and North America, and concentration camps that we haven't seen the likes of since World War II. This is where we at. And it's all going to be in the service of Zionism. So you can't rationalize the decisions if you don't understand that your enemy, his primary objective is to prove that they are the chosen people and we are all slaves to them.
Yeah, your point is ideological. It's not about because I had this exact same conversation and my argument was similar. It was like, what's rational about going into curse? What's rational about, like these things seem to be more ideologically driven, not necessarily about what's in best interest. So under this model, the entire point is to disrupt trade, to be able to go after China and to disrupt China's capability of exporting goods throughout the world, which is part of the reason that Trump put in the tariff war in order to raise up barriers with the US to, even though he may say it was about business, it was more so about blocking off these goods, knowing what they were going to do in Iran. Is that fair?
Yes. I mean, I think when we look at it as a holistic way, this is where the pieces fit together. Otherwise, it seems all contradictory.
Right.
And, I don't believe Trump is just an insane man or these decisions are just out of the whim. These are all calculated decisions. You have an empire with a state apparatus that is stable for hundreds of years and so forth. These are all plans that have been laid out with many multiple options, and each president comes in and chooses out of this variety that is put in front of them. And the objective currently right now is that if, the United States cannot allow the sovereignty of the Arabic people here in the region, and by extension, Muslim nations around us, like Iran, and even look at what's happening in Pakistan, and will not allow China to continue on this, ascension technologically so fast. They have to slow them down somehow, even if they don't want to go to war with them immediately.
What do you think Russia and China does in this situation? I mean, I would imagine that they have to, on some level, be aware of it. They have their war planners. They have their same people who have read the policy documents that the U.S. has been putting out. They realize that these people are sociopaths. And so you know, Iran is a close partnership with Russia at this point. And even if Russia doesn't get involved militarily, certainly they've been hardening Iran against a proposed or expected attack by the US. How do you think the other two powers respond? As you pointed out, China is, I don't want to say dependent, but definitely has a close relationship with Iran, and so does Russia.
Yeah, obviously, China is not worried about such a confrontation because of the fact that now Russia is even, dependent on selling its oil and gas to China because of the cuts of exports to Europe. So what I'm saying is that right now there's an integration of the industrial base and the energy base of Russia and China, and thus they are immune. But Chinese factories will have energy, but who are they going to export to if all the shipping lanes are under fire?
Yeah.
Right. So this is where the dilemma begins. And can the United States, if it disrupts international trade as it's trying to do, can the United States force huge swaths of land like in Africa and Europe and Latin America to buy from it? That's another thing. And as we see, the United States is causing a lot of fires around the world with what we saw with India and Pakistan, what we see on the borders of Nigeria with the Sahel Confederacy, what we're going to start seeing in Mexico pretty soon with the United States attempting to enforce its authority with its military over Mexican territory, as you know. So the United States is trying to create these fires that may scare everybody around them into submission. That's one of the strategies that the United States will play. Are they going to succeed? I'm not sure. And how crazy they are going to get every time they don't succeed, that's another thing. Are they going to raise the level of crazy? And we're very close to, I think there's already indications that we passed the nuclear threshold in terms of warfare, with the attack on Tartus in Syria, the attack on the port of Beirut, or the attack on Yemen a few years ago. So there is, I think, almost no limit to where this could end.
You think this is all done? This sounds like it's more out of desperation than anything else. Like where it's this, what is the word? Tunisian. I always get the word wrong, but the Elysian gap. I'm saying this wrong. Oftentimes, initially, I thought this was going to be about individual countries, but I don't think it's about individual countries anymore. I think it's about a conglomeration of East versus West, where you get this kind of block of China, Iran, Russia, etc., with, let's say, the white world, Europe, the United States, where they feel that their power is slipping away. They can see it with China. They can see it with Russia technologically and militarily. They can see it with China technologically. And as you point out, this notion of we need to stop that, and we need to stop it now, because in 20 years, that horse is way out the barn. We can't catch it. And so we need to find some way to inhibit that currently. Do you see this as more so out of desperation than anything else? How do you view this, that the hegemony is slipping away and they want to maintain this, regardless of what they say about multipolar world, that ultimately they want to maintain a hegemonic control of the globe? And this is one of the pathways of doing so.
Yeah, I mean, look, the ascension of European quote-unquote civilization into control started 900 years ago, 1,000 years ago, with the Crusades. And we're kind of like in a full circle. In a millennia, we're back now, we have the Crusades, right? So the Crusades were followed by the Inquisition in Iberia, and then the Crusades into Slavic lands, and then the invasion of the Americas, and then the invasion of Africa, and then the invasion of Australia. And it's almost a millennia of nonstop where the Western economies, the main source of wealth accumulation is not the Industrial Revolution or trade. The main source of wealth accumulation is the looting of colonized lands at zero cost. And the biggest waste of capital is the mass genocide that's, of human capital, right? This has been the main modem of economy in Western European civilizations, Anglo-Germanic, Latin cultures for a millennia. And they, if they cease to be able to colonize, loot, and genocide indigenous peoples, they cannot accumulate wealth. Okay, that looting and genocide is what made so much accumulation of wealth in the West that you had some guys being able to sit down and spend time inventing machinery. Okay, right? And currently, right now, we see that happening in the streets of the United States, right? Like the U.S. does, on the one hand, the upper class, the 1%, are extremely wealthy, but they don't want to give any money to their masses, and they're offering. This is why the supremacy is important here. Okay, this is why Jewish white supremacy, Christian white supremacy, Zionism in general is crucial. They're offering a way out to their masses that are hungry. They're saying, well, you know what? If you kill in the streets of New York, the cop is going to kill you, right? If you try to steal a car in Chicago, the cop is going to kill you. But you can carry a gun and go to the front lines in Palestine, in Africa, in Arabic countries, kill at will, rape and pillage, and you can have all the accumulated loot for you as a Jew from the Bronx that goes down to the front in Gaza, or as an American soldier or mercenary that goes down on the streets of Yemen or in Burkina Faso, try to assassinate Traore. You see, this has been what the elite in Germanic, Anglo, Latin cultures have been offering their working class for a millennia. Your way out of poverty is go kill and loot and rape and pillage.
By the way, as an aside, I did a video on Ibrahim Traore. There was nothing explosive in the video, and YouTube demonetized that video. I am sitting here like, what the hell? We weren't talking about wars. We weren't talking about any of that stuff. And just almost by very mention of his name, it created that response. From your point of view, what happens when they do this? Does this spark a war in the Middle East? I mean, if the U.S. gets embroiled into a war in the Middle East, but I guess from their point of view, we didn't have anything to do with it. That was all Israel. But there's no way the U.S. is going to leave Israel to its own devices. And certainly Israel knows that it's going to get hit. If it does that, Iran is a country of 80 million people with ungodly amount of missile and technology. Israel's going to get hit. What happens after that? Like, it seems suicidal.
Yeah, I mean, it's 100 years war. It's been going on. Didn't stop for us here since World War I, even a little bit more than 100 years.
Yeah.
So I don't think the West is going to withdraw anytime soon if they're not beaten. This is the thing. The whole Western economies and media and international diplomacy has been dedicated to maintaining this Zionist colony for over 100 years, and they're going to continue until they have their skull crushed, literally. You've got to break somebody's nose for them to stop. And this is why it's getting more and more violent, because the indigenous people are also fed up. You know, October 7th was a clear indication that the Palestinians have decided, you know what, we'd rather all die now, all at once, and take you all with us, okay? And we cease to exist, all of us, and the whole world into Armageddon, than die slowly and in you know, in the quiet corner, and nobody is listening and seeing us being killed. So this is where we at. The indigenous people here right now have reached a point of no return in terms of their resistance. And the West is also all in on this, as we see with the genocide. And the genocide has been expanded into Syria. It's now over 60,000 culled in Syria in the last few months. And we see the West is willing to expand the killing field from India to Congo. This is what the West is willing to do. So people all around the globe should not delude themselves that this could end anytime soon if there is no defeat of the West. And the populace in Canada, the United States, citizens of the West that don't want to be involved in this ongoing genocide, the worst since World War II, and don't want their countries to become fully fascist. They're already fascist, but fully fascist. They have a very small, short window to take action. We're not talking about demonstrating in the streets. Look at those students, how they got their, throats crushed, by the police in Columbia University. Take precautions and defend yourself, protect yourself from the what is coming.
Wow. Laith, man, thank you for this conversation. I always appreciate these conversations, and I appreciate your take. I like I said, I was very skeptical of this. I saw Joe Biden when he used to whine, "Oh, I don't want Israel to do this. Oh, Netanyahu is a son of a bitch," and all this other stuff. Here's more weapons. Here's more guns, etc. And for all of this talk, until I see Trump say, "We're stopping the weapons. We're stopping this. We're not giving you political support," then I'm very skeptical of all of this. Let's say the reporting that's coming out. Thank you for this, man. I really appreciate it. Laith Marouf, just to give your bio. Laith Marouf, he's an award-winning multimedia producer and media policy law consultant focused on issues of liberation and decolonization of indigenous nations to Arab peoples and building broadcasting capabilities for misrepresented and underrepresented communities around the world. And Laith, just please tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, freepalestine.video. You can watch all our latest reports from the field and episodes of our discussion shows, and donate to help us continue producing this content.
Very cool, man. Thank you for this. I appreciate it. You be safe, okay?
See you soon.
Have a good one. All right. Laith, shout out to him. I've become very cynical of this stuff. And I've become very cynical of it because I watch the last president for over a year pretend as if he was working behind the scenes, AOC going on stage. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are working tirelessly to end the conflict. And then nobody believed it. And even Tim Walz, when he comes out, he says, we would be different. But he couldn't articulate how he would be different. And he even says, I know you guys don't believe me when we say this. Yeah, we don't believe you because you can't even articulate how you would be different. Will you be deporting students? Maybe not, but everything else follows suit. And then Israel itself runs this expose where they point out that the Israeli military was shocked that the U.S. allowed it to go on for so long, that Joe Biden at no point pushed Netanyahu to behave differently, nor did he ever tell him to stop. Kept giving weapons, kept giving money, kept giving political support, even changed internal reporting that was pointing out that Israel was starving the Palestinian population, something, by the way, that is against our laws to assist when we make that determination. And so they changed the determination. So all the way down the line for over a year, the Biden administration had just been lying to the American public. Okay, fast forward to Donald Trump, who all the reporting that was coming out, Axios and everything else said, Trump is giving Netanyahu a free hand to do whatever he wants. Okay. And then a few days later, the reporting is Trump cut ties with Netanyahu. Okay, that's weird. And if indeed that is true, why doesn't Iran believe that? What I mean is this, and there's more videos than this, but this is one where Iran points out, we will open the gates of hell if we are attacked. And this is an underground missile facility, a new one, apparently, very deep underground with the capability of unleashing hell on Earth. That's their point. You even get Iran showing drones to keep track of US ships and planes and armaments in the area, meaning they are looking at this in a particular way. And so regardless of what is being said, Iran is thinking, you said you were going to attack us. Israel said they were going to attack us. You've broken off negotiations, meaning you've associated us with Ansar Allah. So everything that they do, you've associated with us. And so you've crafted a context by which you can now justify, quote unquote, an attack on us and say, well, we did everything we could in regards to negotiations. Now, on a surface level, what is being said is that the US made a deal with the Houthis, or the Ansar Allah. I'm saying Houthis is just the way the people know it, but Ansar Allah. On the surface level, Israel is upset. On the surface level, Trump would try to make a deal with Iran that Israel would block in Congress to ensure that the deal with the Saudis doesn't go through, or a deal with Iran doesn't go through, and even agitating with videos going after Trump saying, hey, you said you were going to stop them from getting a missile. The Libyan option is the only option. But understand, the Libyan option is a red line, which would push Trump into a corner where he would have to attack anyway. So you choose the narrative that you want to run with. Again, I'm more skeptical of this because I told you I was more skeptical in the very beginning of the negotiations. But hey, I could be wrong, right? I've been wrong in the past. I could be wrong again. We'll see. I hope I am wrong, by the way. I hope this is not 2 3-dimensional chess. I hope it is the shallow surface narrative that is being put out this morning. I really do. I want to bring in my guests. I am joined with the man himself, Arnaud Develay. He is, there we are. He is an author, political analyst, and international lawyer specializing in international criminal law. His latest book, Foreign Entanglements, Biden, Ukraine, and the Fracturing of American Political Consensus. Arnaud, man, welcome to the show. Happy Victory Day.
Thank you, Jamal. Happy Victory Day to you and to all our listeners.
Absolutely. I am so jealous. I would love to be on Red Square watching all of this take place. I am one of those Americans that believe this is sacred, that believe this is should be a world holiday, that the European leaders are being childish and desecrating something that's sacred. I really do. Did you get the opportunity to see any of the parade?
Yeah, on TV.
Oh, okay. So you didn't go. I would imagine it's insanely busy.
No, well, I got the invitation, but it was kind of late in the process, and so there's only that many people you can pack onto Red Square.
You got an
So I
invite.
guess,
Oh, you got an
yeah,
invite.
well, No, not an invite. I was given a link to
Okay.
register to get my accreditation, but I was given the link like on Wednesday, and I don't know exactly how long before Wednesday the process was complete. But by the time I got on the page, it said, the process is complete. So, oh well, it's okay.
Yeah. One of the interesting things that I've noticed, and I want to get your take on this. I was fascinated by this. I thought it was funny. So Zelensky has been begging for ceasefire. Now he's doing this for obvious reasons, right? His troops are getting crushed. He knows they're getting crushed. They are being pushed back day by day by day. Russia's making gains and taking either hamlets or villages. And so Putin says, okay, we want a truce for 3 days. We want to effectively have a Victory Day celebration. We don't want you bugging us while we're doing this. And apparently there were threats of, if you attack this parade, you can kiss Kiev goodbye. And we have Rezhniks waiting. If you attack this parade, meaning you forfeit your life if you attack us on this. Zelensky comes out and puts out a thing saying, okay, we're going to call a truce. But we want that truce to not just go 3 days.
І наші
We want that truce to go for 30 days. Now, this is going to be ignored, correct? Or am I wrong on this?
Well, I mean, fundamentally, Russia doesn't, as you said, and that's very important to always stress this point. This is the predicate out of which everything flows. Is that Russia does not need a ceasefire. Ukraine does, and the US do. So, as you mentioned, slowly but surely, Russian Federation is grinding its way westward.
Right.
So it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when Russia will feel like it's gone far enough in accomplishing its objectives. So to the extent the idea is to get a ceasefire for the sake of a ceasefire, Russia feels like, we should work on a ceasefire, but with the understanding that we have a framework on which we are working, and which basically says, as has been repeated several times, those 4 oblasts that used to be Ukraine are now Russian. And you guys have to basically abandon any pretense of joining NATO. You want to join the EU and be a burden to Brussels, be my guest. But NATO, that's a no-go, if I may say so. So, yeah, that's a very simple proposition when you think about it. So the idea was, Russia suggested that in order, for instance, to get a clear feel for Kiev's ulterior motives and motivations in its seriousness in implementing a ceasefire, Russia suggested that Ukraine unilaterally pull out of the beyond west of the administrative borders of the new regions, administrative borders, right? And then we would be able to say, okay, now you're serious, now you're talking, let's do this, and let's make sure that it lasts, not only the 30 days, but that to the extent nothing happens, nothing goes wrong, we can extend it, and then over time we can have those confidence building measures and create this dynamic. This is how it works, no matter what conflict you're talking about. But Kiev doesn't want to hear anything about this. That's why we've been hearing Zelensky adamantly refusing anything conditioned on what he refers as territorial concessions, going as far as saying, by the way, we actually won't even recognize Crimea. I mean, Crimea is a done deal. Yeah. You said yourself to your own constituents that you do not have the military means to regain those territories whatsoever. So what are you talking about Crimea? And Trump actually was right when he said, I mean, now you're coming up with Crimea. What were you doing 11 years ago when Crimea decided to bolt out? Now you're coming with like, oh, hey, and by the way, it's Crimea. Like, what's going on here? So it's all over the place. It makes no sense. We've heard reports the last couple of days that they're still trying to get back into Quartz Oblast. I mean, for God's sake, just give it up, man. What's the whole point of this?
That they were effectively attacking Kursk again, and those troops, by the way, got captured.
Yes, yes, of course. It's just because we're Russia is ready now. I mean, they're on the up and up on this. They know that. To make a long story short, Kiev's word is worth nothing, and so you got to be ready for anything. Let's remind our listeners that the last week alone, we've been flooded with drones.
Yes.
I mean, in 124-hour span, we've had over 500 drones just launched at every urban center, including airports. Well, I mean, the obvious reason was to try to disrupt the arrival of the foreign heads of states, right? So,
right.
But and even the Chinese premier, his plane had to somehow take evasionary measures to make sure that because there was a drone nearby, So when you see what a bird, the damage that a bird can inflict on a jetliner, at the proper speed. So with a drone, it's you're courting disaster here. So this it's a clown show. It's ridiculous, And so we are not really much more advanced than we were 3 months ago, in a way. Yes, I mean there've been discussions. The US is trying to play good cop, bad cop. But in the end, it all comes down to if you and we're talking about the US here, on the Ukraine file per se. If you're serious about putting an end to the conflict, it's very easy. Just stop providing them with anything that basically fuels the conflict, be it money, weapons, intel, whatever. Just stop it, and it'll be over in no time. In no time.
Well, Peskov has said that. So two things. J.D. Vance said something to the effect of, well, the Russians have demands. It's not that they don't want a peace deal. It's that they have demands that we believe are too much. And it's like, but dude, the demands are rational. Like, meaning if we have a ceasefire and you're still putting in weapons and money and intelligence and they're building up and conscripting, okay, well, that's a ceasefire that is only allowing them to build up, as opposed to, okay, our demands are that they don't do that because we're trying to actually have negotiations and agreements, that type of thing. But Peskov made the point of saying the U.S. is slowly coming around to our point of view. And I suspect that's because they're acknowledging, oh my God, the Ukrainian military will collapse. They can't keep this up. Is that the way you see it, or how do you see it? Do you even believe that Peskov is right in this?
Well, Peskov said that there would not be negotiation as much with the U.S. and that any kind of peace talk or direct talks would have to be with Kiev. But I mean, I don't really understand why he said that. I mean, I guess maybe he's trying to, he's the official spokesperson of the Kremlin, so he has to put some kind of veneer on how public perception works on this particular issue. But personally, I think if there's got to be negotiation, it's between Washington and Russia. I mean, Kiev is just a proxy. We're dealing with someone who's not even legitimate. He's not even the legal president of Ukraine. I mean, I heard that yesterday or the day before yesterday, the Rada ratified this mineral deal.
Yes, I was going to get to that. By the way,
but the guy has no legitimacy to do anything, sign anything in the name of Ukraine. So how can the Rada compound this illegality? So again, it's a clown show. This whole thing is a clown show. And I would be partisan to basically stress that we have, a situation where it's kind of a kabuki theater. We're trying to prop up this guy as if he has any kind of gravitas. I'm talking about Zelensky,
Yeah.
as if he's a reasonable, rational person, as if he has any incentive himself in seeing the conflict come to an end, which we all know is not the case. And we're trying to pretend that he somehow carries with him the legitimacy and the legality, which would somehow it's not just about optics here. The Russians are very legalistic. They're
Okay.
legalese to a T. I mean, uh, so they're not going to rush into something that by definition is bound to be called into question by the next president of Ukraine, because
Well,
this in and of itself could be a pretext to say, no, that peace deal was under duress.
right there.
It was done by someone who was completely acting outside of the law, outside of the constitution. If there was to have been negotiation, even assuming that martial law allows for the suspension of elections, it should have been conducted by the president of the Rada. I mean, the Ukrainian constitution provides for an alternative. The Ukrainian constitution is not the problem. It's just that they're not following their own constitutional framework.
Yeah, I was going
And
to get to
so, in
that.
that sense, how can it be implied or imputed to Russia that Russia is not respecting Ukrainian sovereignty when they've been the one constantly recalling, that hey, there is a constitutional framework. Let's recall that initially, when the Maidan occurred, the Donetsk Republic and Lugansk Republic decided to break away because they realized that the new self-declared authorities following the coup were basically violating the constitution to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's about the Russian speaking or ethnic Russian being able to speak Russian, et cetera, et cetera. So basically, it was never, an issue of, amputating the whole country of a significant chunk, like the good 20% of its territories. It only happened because they refused time after time to abide by their own constitutional framework, abide by the documents that they signed, and that extended this illegality, this patent unlawfulness, extended not only to their European partners, but to the United States, obviously, right? So
Yeah.
we have a kind of it's kind of a make-believe country in the end that does not even walk its own walk. So how can Russia be expected in that regard to just kind of go along and act as if nothing is of the matter here? It's not possible. Not when we're dealing with lives,
Yeah.
thousands of them, and could have been more if they had just stood pat and allowed the Ukrainian army to run a shot on those regions as they were about to. So
Yeah.
this is where we are here, and for the U.S. to kind of come out, of the woodwork now, 3 years into a full-blown conflict that they initiated through the Maidan, that they financed, that they made possible, almost at a, but for 1 degree of separation, they waged war themselves and killed Russian as a result. That's their newspapers of record, the news that's fit to print that says it.
Yep.
And now they're trying to pretend that, they're just passing by, the Good Samaritan. Oh, if somebody's about to drown, let me just jump, send them a lifesaver. I'm like, dude, man. So we have to call, we have to give, you have to call things by their names. You have to stop, effing around. Excuse my French. And at some point, stop insulting the intelligence of the person of the party that you're talking to. And that would be, I think, a good start,
Yeah.
to the extent you really want to make a man, which, I mean, why not? We can give Washington the benefit of the doubt, a new administration. I don't really believe a president replacing another president makes any iota of difference in as far as the uniparty long-term agenda.
Mhm.
I think it was one of your most distinguished guests who stressed that much in as far as the importance of policy papers and how they dictate,
Yeah, Brian Berletti.
the script. Exactly. But why not? Let's assume that, because again, the Russians, I mean, they're going to be looking for ways to wind this whole thing down. I mean, because it's the rational thing to do, right? But not at any price.
Yeah. Look, I agree with you. This notion that Donald Trump is a mediator and war maker. I mean, when you mentioned those attacks with the drones, some of those were missiles. HIMARS missiles were being used, meaning U.S. intelligence was behind it. And so it's like, I'm a mediator, but I'm also firing
A
missiles.
facilitator, an abater, yeah.
Yeah,
An
it's like
accomplice
Canada.
after the fact, before the fact and after the fact.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
outrageous, right? This is Donald Trump talking about
High quality.
DG Geopolitics, call it their colony at this point. I'm just going to play the clip.
We just concluded the rare earth deal with Ukraine. That's been fully ratified and approved by their legislative branches. And so we appreciate that. And I'll be speaking with the president in a little while, a little bit later. And we appreciate that. But the deal is all now signed up and ratified. And we have access to a massive amount of very, very high quality rare earth. We just concluded the rare earth deal with Ukraine.
This deal is so weird. And I don't think people really accommodate how weird this is. It's like a Lend-Lease agreement. So the U.S. can give them weapons, money, and everything else. And apparently with the profits, we get paid back. But for one, nothing can take place before the war ends. Two, most of those are in Lugansk and Donetsk, meaning they're in Russian territory at this point. Three, there's no way to know how much of Ukraine is even going to be left at the end of this war, especially if they keep going and they keep going and Russia keeps going inexorably westward. And four, as you point out, Zelensky is illegitimate. The next person who comes in can say, I didn't have anything to do with it. And five, the last point, most of the pages are secret. Like, we don't even know what is in the other pages of the document. We only saw it the first page. Has Russia released those secret documents that were a part of this deal and agreement?
No, they haven't really even talked much about it because they understand it's not worth the ink that's on it, because they have the initiative. They forge reality on the ground. So whatever is in that document has no relevance to them. There's no point in trying to overanalyze something that most likely will not reflect reality by the time the Russians are done. And as you correctly mentioned, a significant chunk of whatever mineral are being talked about, and oil and gas and coal, and is in under Russian control.
Yeah.
And the situation is still evolving as we speak.
I guess I'm super curious what's in those documents.
Complete access to the Black Sea. I mean, Odessa could be, if we're not moving, towards a meaningful peace negotiation, Russia is going to be doing what it needs to be doing. And again, Arestovich mentioned it. You could limit the damage to 4 regions if you want to play ball seriously, if you're serious about what you mean. And if you're not, in 6 months it could be 6 regions, and in a year it could be 8 regions. I mean, there's no limit to it because they're on the back heel, basically.
Is it fair to say, though, that Russia hasn't really taken any massive cities? it's been a grinding campaign, but they haven't, like, I'm trying to think of one of the name of the cities. that they-
Kramatorsk, Kupiansk.
R- right, Slaviansk
Yeah.
Kramatorsk,
Yes.
condemnation, for example. Like, that is, from my understanding, the last main military center that Ukraine has at their disposal. So they're not trying to take cities; they're trying to destroy the military. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. Russia does not include the taking over of cities of major urban center in its doctrine. It basically goes around it. It defeats, like you say, military units around the city, secure, the accesses in and out, and lay siege and wait for them to come out with their hands over their head. That's what they do. So this is not going to happen. They're not going to be storming city. That would be the last thing to do.
I
So
see.
you just go around them, you wrap them up, you create a cauldron, and you move forward and you move on. You absorb them as like a bubble behind your own lines.
Mhm.
That's it.
How far westward do you think they're going to go? Do they go until the Ukrainian military collapses, in which case they get an unconditional surrender? Or do they go to a certain point and stop? Because from my point of view, the moment that you stop, they just build up another military behind whatever lines rump state that's left.
Yeah, right now, I mean, this is pretty much a quandary. Nobody really knows what will be adopted as an option. But if we are coherent with ourselves, and what we know for a fact is that one of the twin objective of the special military operation again is the denazification.
Right.
So you could have some kind of a makeover election. Who would you get? You're gonna get the gas princess, the mayor of Kiev, Klitschko,
Yeah.
Poroshenko, Bils. I mean, makes no sense. You have to basically gut out all that group of people that have taken over what's left of the Ukrainian state. Those hardcore Azov type, Aida battalion types. That means right sector, Sloboda, all those, they have to be taken out. We're talking about probably about 25 to 30,000 people. You get rid of those people one way or another, and then you can build, back from scratch. But as long as you don't do a Kurgan, you have to, kind of a scrap, and remove all the, the infection.
Yeah.
You're going to be back at it sooner or later. Could be 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, but you'll be back at it. I mean, you're not removing the direct root causes of what made the current mess, what it is. So then, what do? I mean, you could actually launch a kind of a lightning strike on Kiev. You could do that, maybe from the north, from Sumy, a region.
Mhm.
You could send special forces and have them basically take out all those guys, predicated on specific intel, and just do a decapitation, operations. Just and they know how to do this. A lot of people have actually been saying, why haven't they done it thus far? Because Zelensky is their best ally in that sense, because the guy is such a fuck up that he does the work for you.
Yeah.
But to the extent, at some point, yes, this war is going to have to come to an end, and Ukraine, or the Ukraine problem, the Ukraine file is going to have to be resolved in a way that preserve Russia long-term security interest. In order to do that, you're going to have to go in and grab those guys or eliminate them, pure and simple. And we're talking about probably about 30.
One last question before I let you go. When Ukraine buckles, What do you think Europe does?
Nothing. I think it's a bluff.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yes. Yes.
Fair enough. I said nothing.
But if we don't take care of the problem of the clowns in Kiev, we are allowing Europe to feel like as if they can now, they have this kind of, what you want to call it, this pivot, this anchoring point that allows them to put together this somewhat legitimate process, which would consist in deploying reassurances troops. We don't want that.
Yeah.
We don't want them to make that mistake, because the Russians have been clear. Any NATO country's troops being deployed there are fair game, and that could actually be,
Tripwire.
yeah, a tripwire for something that it would be very difficult to walk back. So we need to remove any kind of factor within Kiev that allows them to feel like, we have somebody, our men in Kiev, so to speak, whoever that might be, but somebody who supports the agenda, so to speak.
Yeah.
So sooner or later, this is, I think, what's going to have to happen.
Yeah. Either way, that has to take place.
And we're getting
Otherwise-
closer to this time now, because we're seeing that this is not going anywhere. This is not going anywhere.
You mean the negotiations? Just to be clear.
Yes.
Arnaud Develay. And by the way, I agree with you. I don't know where around it. Because if you don't do that, any election that takes place is just going to be one of these lunatics. And it will be like, oh, here's a new election. But the new government is still going to be the same people. You've banned the East in regards to political parties. You've banned opposition media. I mean, you have to deal with the root cause. Otherwise, nothing changes. Arnaud, thank you for this, man. Arnaud Develay. He is an international lawyer author, political analyst, and international lawyer specializing in international criminal law. His latest book, Foreign Entanglements, Biden, Ukraine, and the Fracturing of American Political Consensus. Thank you for this, Arnaud, man. I always appreciate your analysis.
Thank you, Jamal.
You have a good one. All right. Shout out to Arnaud. Shout out. I want to go to my next guest, the man himself with the Hawaiian shirt. I am so jealous of that shirt. Carl Ja, how you doing, man? You doing okay?
I'm doing great, Jamar. Thank you for asking. My wife bought me these shirts. I asked him to get me a different shirt for every day of the week, so I will always wear a different style but t-shirt for your show, Jamal.
Well, I appreciate it, and I love that shirt. I'm not joking. I love that shirt. Carl Ja, he is host of Silk and Steel podcast, focused on China and surrounding regions and their history, culture, and politics. And one of the most knowledgeable people on the subject matter that I've come across. And I always appreciate you joining me. I always learn something in these interviews. I have to get to, it's Victory Day. And I've been watching some of the parades. And one of the interesting things has been what seems to be the relationship between Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin. They seem to be getting closer and closer as time goes on. And a lot of that is provoked by the West, right? They've been just pushing these countries together. So one of the things in the parade that a lot of Americans may not know is the sacrifice that China made in that war. And this is China. Red Square. Go into the sacrifice that China made in that war fighting the Japanese. I mean, it was significant that Japan was a monster. Like, I know we talk about the Nazis and the Germans, but Jesus, the stuff that Japan was doing was just outlandish. Go into the number of Chinese that died in that war and the outcomes, like the consequences of that war in regards to China.
Well, 20 million plus. That's the figure of total number of Chinese military and civilians who perished during the World War II. So this is a big deal for China, and a lot of Americans are not aware, because the American knows this history as we saved China. We saved China from the Japanese. But in fact, Soviet Union was actually quite pivotal in ending the Japanese occupation of China, because in August 9th, the Soviet Union declared war on Japan. This is right after the United States dropped the first atomic bomb in Hiroshima. And this 1.5 million Soviet Red Army roll across the border into Manchuria. And within a matter of a month, they steamrolled the Japanese Guangdong Army. They pushed all the way to the Korean Peninsula. And that's where the State Department in Washington start panicking a little bit. They're like, whoa. If the Red Army keep pushing, they're going to take the entire Korea. So they made a phone call to Kremlin and say, okay, let's work out a deal. How about you take everything north of 38th parallel, and we'll take care of the people south of the 38th parallel. And this Red Army stopped, because at that time, Stalin was very accommodating to Americans. He kind of, like this, what happened in Greece too. He basically, like Greece, okay, that can be part of Western Alliance. And so this has led to the division of Korea, essentially, because Americans came in and instead of a purge of all the Japanese collaborators from the government, they keep everybody in place. So everybody in Southern Korea is like, wait a minute, what kind of liberation is this? The same people are still in charge. And, so this actually led to a uprising that happened before the Korean War started, because the two sides, half of the Korea, they wanted to have a unified government. There was a formation of a People's Republic of Korea, and United States did not like that at all. They think it's a communist takeover. That started the crackdown, and this is really predates the Korean War. People think Korean War is just when North Korea rolled into South Korea. It actually started with American occupation of southern half of Korea. But for China, this is equally important, because what happened when the Soviet Red Army occupied Manchuria, that allowed the communist forces to send 100,000 troops into Manchuria, and they start taking over, because the Soviet Red Army, they're not interested in running a Chinese city. They're not interested in to actually administer every day of Chinese city. So they let all the communists run the show, basically taking over this Manchurian city administrations. And that, built the basis later for the Chinese Civil War, when KMT, with the backing of the United States, tried to come to Manchuria and take over. At that time, most of the Chiang Kai-shek's army was in the southwestern China, and Japan had occupied like about 1/3 of China at the time. Wow. And when Japan surrendered, it was a rush to see who can go accept Japanese surrender first. It was a rush between the communist side and the KMT side. So the KMT side, the Chiang Kai-shek side, was held by United States. So they would board U.S. Navy ships in Hong Kong, and U.S. and will transport them on U.S. Navy ships all the way to northern China to grab the northern Chinese cities before the communists moved in. Communists were a lot closer, because they were already entrenched in the countryside of northern China. They just don't control the big cities. The Japanese had controlled the big cities and the major rail lines. And so this led to the Chinese Civil War, and led to the communist victory in 1949. And kind of butthurt about this for a long time, because in 1946, after the war, the U.S. actually moved the headquarters of the 7th Fleet to China. A lot of people don't know this. The U.S. 7th Fleet headquarters was in Qingdao, China, and U.S. sent 60,000 troops to China. Ostensibly was to accept the Japanese surrender, to ship all the Japanese civilians and surrender troops back to Japan. But really, their other mission was to help Chiang Kai-shek took over. And this kind of the American intervention in the Chinese Civil War very early on. Later, that led to when Chiang Kai-shek fled to Taiwan.
Right.
America, and when the Korean War break out, Sherman sent the U.S. 7th Fleet into the Taiwan Strait to prevent the crossing of Taiwan Strait by the People's Liberation Army. So that directly led to kind of the separate status of Taiwan until today. I mean, so this whole everything traced to the end of World War II. And of course, end of World War II was also when Taiwan was returned from Japan, because before World War II, during World War II, Taiwan was a Japanese colony, and at the end of the World War II, Japan had to give up all its colonial positions in Taiwan, Korea, etc. And so Taiwan Island was returned to China, but then Chinese Civil War broke out. So the KMT government fled to Taiwan and entrenched themselves there. And American military intervention in the Taiwan Strait meant, Taiwan Island and mainland China remain separate till this day. And Taiwan is still effectively a client state of the United States. So this is all kind of related to the aftermath of the World War II. And as for, atrocity that Japan did, people can look up Nanjing Massacre, and they can look up Unit 731. That's where Japanese perform human experimentations on prisoners, live prisoners. They would perform stuff like vivisection, which when they cut up their prisoners while they're still alive to see how their organs are reacting to the experiment they perform on. So these are very horrific stuff, and these Chinese people never forget about it. So this, when Xi Jinping goes to Moscow and stress the bond that was forged during the anti-fascist struggle, this just not an empty statement. They're talking about historical fact. But the interesting thing is when Xi Jinping mentioned this, he also made allusion to the present. He's talking about, in the present, we're also facing danger of countries practicing unilateralism and bullying others. I mean, he's effectively compared to United States to the Nazis, and fat Japanese fascists. But wait, where's the lie? U.S. is supporting the genocide right now via Israel in Gaza, and and they have been bombing Yemen, the one country that stood up and said no more genocide. There will be no more shipping through Red Sea until the genocide stops. And And of course, what a spectacular failure that has been. United States lost 3 aircraft, F-18s, against a country with no air force. I mean, I know. Yemenis never find out why we don't have healthcare, Jamar. They never find out.
I mean, there's another reason too, though. The Germans, Nazis looked at themselves as being exceptional. We're somehow better just because we're better. It's almost like God made us better than everybody else. And the U.S. uses this notion of we're exceptional, we're the indispensable nation. That rhetoric is very similar if you really think about it.
Actually, Hitler looked up to the United States as a model. Like he thought you like United States, the whole manifest destiny. The westward expansion, he thought that was like his whole predecessor to his expanding the Lebensraum for the Germanic people, right? And so in many ways, Hitler looked up to the United States as a role model. These are well documented. Like I'm not making stuff up. People.
No, you're not making it up. He even made the argument. It was kind of like, who remembers the U.S. murdering all the Native Americans? Nobody. Like basically, in 200 years, nobody's going to remember that these people were genocided, or at the very least, it's not going to matter. And so, if we do this to the Jews and the Russians in 200 years, if we win, who's going to care? Like he was making these very similar arguments. And by the way, he's not entirely wrong. Like, we are aware of what we did to the Native Americans, but it doesn't factor into anything. I mean, hell, we even have Thanksgiving where we act like the Native Americans is serving corn and turkey to the pilgrims. And that's what we're learning in school, right? Like, it's just
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just wild. It's just very wild. Thank you for that. Because I don't think many people know that. Like, it's not something we're taught. We even call it the forgotten war. And when we learn about this stuff, we learn about it in the context of the US coming to the rescue, saving the day, helping the Soviets, helping the Brits, helping the French. But it was us. It was MacArthur. It was
Trump
our
said we won the war. Trump
Yep.
has said basically United States won World War II. We did all the heavy lifting. We did everything, right? But if you actually look at the numbers, you know, the majority of the Nazi army was fighting the Soviet in the Eastern Front. I mean, Soviet Union really did heavy lifting here. I mean, of course, United States helped. You know, they were allies. United States supplied Soviets through land and lease, but you know, still, it doesn't negate the fact that the main manpower was the Soviet Red Army that crushed the Nazis' war machine, and also Japan. 2/3 of the Japanese Imperial Army was tied down in mainland China. You know, because they were got themselves into a quagmire situation where they can't leave, they can't extricate themselves because Chinese people never gave up. The resistance went on for more than 8 years, and you know, because people think World War II in Europe and United States is taught the World War II started in 1939 when Nazi Germany invaded Poland. Well, for the Chinese people, the war started way early. I mean, they started in 1931 when Japan annexed Manchuria, and then the war kind of never stopped. But it got intensified in 1937 when Japan took over Beijing and started the Battle of Shanghai. So this happened way before Nazi invasion of Poland, and you know, in Stalingrad, I mean the Battle of Shanghai, some call it like the Stalingrad of the East. You know, there's a huge number of army were involved. Chinese throw in 750,000 men try to defend Shanghai, and you know, they put a hell of a fight, and that. When Japan finally was able to push through Shanghai, the Japanese Imperial Army was so angry that it was not a cakewalk and they weren't welcome with flowers. This is why they made the decision to commit the massacre in Nanjing, because Nanjing was the capital of China at that time. So because they suffered such a great loss in the Battle of Shanghai, they decided to take it out on the civilians of Nanjing. So, I mean, Chinese people never forget that.
And we never learned that stuff. Like I would tell you, I went through school not knowing that China was a major factor in that war. And it was only like later, as I became an adult and reading about the war, was like, hey, China was heavily involved in that conflict. Like it's not taught here. It's the weirdest thing in the world. And so I love the fact that Xi Jinping is there in order to shine a light spotlight. Like, yes, we were there. We were fighting that war too. We lost 20 million or more people in that conflict. Every bit as much as you all. Thank you for that, Carl. I deeply appreciate that. Like I said, I learn something new every time you're here. One of the other things that is super interesting to me is this. This is Financial Times. And look at what it says. China exports jump 8% in April despite the tariffs. So despite the trade war.
Yeah,
please.
But you know what? They're not. That jump is not jump to the United States, because right now we just received on the West Coast of the United States the first shipment from China after the tariff has started. And the shipment, it was a huge drop off in terms of containers and in terms of goods that's arrived. So the increase of Chinese export is actually to the rest of the world. This is because China have been preparing for this moment since 2018 during the first Trump term, when Trump gave Chinese companies and Chinese leadership a great shock when they start sanctioning Chinese companies, and later when they arrested Huawei CFO Meng Wanzhou in Canada on behest of the United States for supposedly sanction busting sanction busting for supplying telecom equipment to Iran, and that led China down this process of diversifying from the United States. At one point, 30% of China's export was to United States. Now it's about 14%. And United States used to be the top destination for Chinese export. Today, the biggest trading partner for China is ASEAN, is the Southeast Asian countries. This is why Xi Jinping never picked up the call. He went to Southeast Asia. He went to visit Vietnam, visit Malaysia, because that's where the Chinese investment is going. That's where the Chinese supply chain is expanding to. Of course, with the whole new Trump tariff, a lot of goods are now a lot of Chinese components now it's going to ship to Vietnam, and they're going to be for the final assembly, and then they're going to ship to United States. If you look at the data for Vietnam's import number from China, skyrocketing. Vietnam's export to United States, skyrocketing. You can just put two and two together. You see what is really going on here. So there's really no true decoupling from China, but at the same time, China is decoupling from the United States by focusing on markets outside of the U.S. And this is why China has been prepared, but United States is not. Because as I said over and over, China has been diversifying to other markets. Our Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, keep on saying, Chinese need us. They need our money, right? They need our market. Well, money is fungible. China can find other market for their goods. They can create stimulus. They can print money. But how is United States going to find replacement for the Chinese goods? A lot of people think, oh, it's easy. We'll just get it from elsewhere, from Vietnam, from India. Well, first of all, how is that bring manufacturing back to the United States? You're just shipping production out of China. But second of all, you are this is not as simple. People are so removed from manufacturing in the United States. They think creating supply chain is like snapping your finger. It turns out when Apple tried to shift this extra production to India in order to manufacture iPhone just for Americans, so Americans will get the special made in India iPhone. When Apple tried to do that, they ran into problem because Chinese government put some soft block on exporting machineries to Foxconn factory in India. Because for Apple to move their production line, they still need Chinese machine tools to make iPhones, and they still need Chinese components. And and Chinese government say, what, we see what you're doing. We're not going to allow that.
Are you serious?
Yes,
that's hilarious.
So there's really no running away from the Chinese supply chain. Like when China started restricting rare earth shipment to United States, there's a lot of big brain talking heads say, oh, it's easy. Rare earth is actually not rare. We can just opening mines. We close mine because of the environmental regulation. Okay, never mind how long it will take to open a new mine, usually 3 to 4 years. But even it's not as simple as dig it out of the earth, because you need to refine it. Where China dominates is actually the refining process, to refine the rare earth into magnets you can use in your EVs or in your Raytheon Lockheed Martin weapons. But to make the magnets, guess what? All the machines to make that magnets, guess where they're made? They're made in China. So they're going to have to import those machines from China if they want to start the rare earth supply chain in the United States. And guess what? They just got hit by 145% tariff by Trump. So again, people are so they're happy hollowing out of manufacturing from the United States so long. People in the US, even the so-called smart people, they don't know about manufacturing anymore. They don't know anything about supply chain, right? People like Scott Bessent, what did he work before? He worked for George Soros, for the Soros Fund. I mean, what does he know about manufacturing? And I mean, he might know a lot about derivatives, and trade and the bond market, but what does he really know about manufacturing and supply chains? It turns out I don't think he knows very much, and he's apparently getting his information from China, from likes of like Gordon Chan, like he thinks China is facing imminent collapse if they don't export to United States, which could be further from the truth. I was in China in April, and what I've seen on the ground, boom of Shanghai, which is a very touristy area, is booming. It's full of domestic tourists, and people can look at all the footage online of the recent footage coming out of China last week, because China actually celebrates the International Workers' Day like the rest of the world, and most people in China get the first week of May off. So every tourist spot in China is fully jam-packed right now. And
just to be clear, did you say the first week?
First week, yes. Don't go if you want to travel to China. Don't go in the first week of May, and don't go in the first week of October, because October is their national day, and they also get a whole week off. And that's when the entire China is on vacation for those 2 weeks, and it's just terrible. Like everywhere just be jam packed with people. But they are not concerned about the tariff. I'm telling you, they're not. They're really not thinking about it.
Well, Carl, Trump said, and my president wouldn't lie to us because he's our president, that China is on the brink of collapse. The factories have been closing left and right, and that you all are effectively desperate for a deal because of the factories collapsing.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Xi Jinping never called, and they are making it. They all like Scott Besson keep on saying they need us. Guess what? They never called, and when they finally made contact, guess what? It's because the Chinese vice premier, he was going through a trip to Europe to talking to the EU leaders, because now EU and China have agreed to remove all mutual trade restrictions, including all the sanctions during Trump's first term and Biden years, because Europe is finally waking up. It's like, okay, maybe we cannot depend on the United States with Trump at the helm. And so they're going back to China to make nice. And so this is why, this is where Trump is a great peacemaker. Is bring Eurasia back together, right? And he did that in East Asia too. China, ASEAN, Japan, South Korea, they also just recently met in Milan in Europe, and they came up with a joint statement. They're going to form the world's largest free trade bloc. This is huge. This is, China has 1.4 billion people. ASEAN, the Southeast Asia, has 680 million people. Japan has more than 100 million. South Korea has 50 million. You add it all together, that's more than 2 billion people. That's a huge market, huge block. And they all condemn Trump tariff. So again, Trump is the great peacemaker of East Asia. He managed to bring China, Japan, Korea, these old enemies back together to sit in the one table to agree to form one trade block. And remember, just a week before, Japan said they would not sign on any American-led anti-China trade bloc because they said their relationship with Beijing is too important. And then a week after, they went to sign free trade agreement with China, with the rest of the East Asia. Trump is my president for acceleration.
I want to play a clip for you. This clip is outrageous. I want to get your take on it because it's so outrageous. Again, my president, Donald Trump, he's asked about, hey, it seems like people are going to be losing their jobs because, the shipping containers aren't really coming in. So if they're not coming in, they're not making money, and those people are going to be laid off. Listen to what he says here.
Because business has slowed down, as you mentioned,
in China.
But we're seeing as a result, the ports here in the US, the traffic has really slowed, and now thousands of dock workers and truck drivers are worried about their jobs.
Yeah, no, that means we lose less money. When I see that.
Because business.
She told him, Mr. President, because many ships aren't coming in anymore because of your tariffs, that the dock workers are going to lose their jobs. And he says, well, that just means we have a less trade imbalance. Like we're losing less money. Like she is literally
Jamar,
telling him people are going to lose their jobs.
Jamar, I really want to get the BYD supercar, the one that I show speed got in China, the Yangwang U9 that can jump up and down and dance, and that car is $250,000. I really want to get that car, but you know what? I decided I'm not gonna do that. So I just made $200,000, Jamar. I just made $250,000.
He's acting like an exchange of goods like magically disappears when you buy the good. Like if I go to the store and I buy a stereo, that somehow the money vanishes or the stereo vanishes. You got an item for the money that, like, meaning there's an exchange that has taken place.
Jamar,
you have it wrong.
It's so unfair. It's so unfair. You know, I go to the grocery store, I buy shitloads of grocery from them. They never buy anything from me. I mean, I think I'm gonna boycott my grocery store. This is unfair.
I just starve, right? I just go on a fast for a month because I want to keep my money.
But Jamar, the American consumer hasn't really been hit yet. Because right now they're still working through the 5 to 7 weeks of inventory the American businesses build up in anticipation of the tariff, because they have been front loading by importing a lot in April, in March, and so that's why right now if you order through Amazon, you're actually getting goods delivered from Amazon storehouses, and you know, but those supplies gonna run out eventually in 5 to 7 weeks. But even so, price already started to rise. Why? Because when these companies start to stockpile in anticipation of the tariff, they have to pay additional warehouse fees. And guess what they did? They just passed additional warehouse fee right to the consumer. That's why we're already seeing the price increase even before the shortage hit. But it's gonna get really, really bad if nothing is done. And by early June, July, it's gonna be a mess. And even if Trump were to roll back tariff today, June is still effed. It's still FUBAR because it takes 15 to 30 days to cross the Pacific. So even if they restart the trade again today, even if the Chinese suppliers say, okay, let bygone be bygone, we will trust you again, we will start taking your order again, you will take if they load up ships in China today, you will take 2 weeks to get to Port of Los Angeles and Long Beach, and you will take 4 weeks to reach New York. And so even if they unplug the embargo today, the supply chain is so messed up. And then keep in mind that the U.S. port is designed to handle like optimum traffic, like a smooth sailing of continuous supply. It's not handled to like a traffic jam situation where there's like no ship for a month and suddenly all the ships comes in. There's gonna be a huge traffic jam at the ports. So the supply chain is already effed. I'm sorry. I mean that's like at least for the summer, it's already FUBAR. We're really talking about whether can we save the Christmas season this year. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about if a deal can be done. We're really talking about saving the Christmas season right now.
I keep thinking to myself, what kind of deal can these two even make? So apparently China and the US are going to meet. As you pointed out, this was because the US Trump kept saying, I'm talking to China, even though his underlings are like, we're not talking to China. And China was like, we're not talking to Trump.
And the Trump and the Chinese foreign ministry said, we finally agree after U.S. repeatedly pressuring us to talk. So this is why when our vice premier is on his way in Europe, we decided, okay, we'll allow for a side meeting with Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. So Scott Bessent is flying to Switzerland to catch the vice premier of China when he goes through Europe. And if you listen to Scott Bessent says, how they're going to work out the deal, he said, well, okay, first we're going to meet, and then for the next 2 days, we're going to decide, what we can agree to talk about. So we're not even talking about actually working a deal. They're going to spend 2 days to talk about what they can agree to talk about. I mean, we are at a very early stage of any kind of deal right now. Right now, they just agree to talk, and they still don't know, what they're even going to talk about. I mean, remember when the Japanese delegation came to Washington, Jamarlt, after the Liberation Day, they came to find out what the hell is going on and what the Washington want, and the Trump's people told them, what is your offer? And the Japanese delegate was flabbergasted, we came here to find out what you want.
Right.
It doesn't look like you know what you want. And,
right. It's like you've passed all these tariffs. We come here to try to figure out what's going on, and you're asking us what's our offer. It's like, dude, we don't even know what's happening right now.
This is why they left with the no deal. So we are still at that stage with China. We're not even. We're just barely start talking right now. So I think the market actually, overreacted to think the deal is imminent. No, the deal is not imminent. And China has always said, the Chinese Commerce Ministry has always said, the precondition for a deal is mutual. It must be based on mutual respect.
Right.
And United States must remove all the unilateral sanction and tariff first. So I mean, and I don't know, Trump right now, first he says, no, we're not going to unilaterally remove all the tariff. Now he's talking about, okay, maybe the tariff will come down a little bit to 50%. So I don't know what's going on, man. This guy, he can change his mind just like that. We're still at very early stage of two-side talking. I don't foresee any kind of deal reaching this month.
But to be clear, though, from China's point of view, 50% is not going to cut it. It has to go down to 0 before we can even start talking. And one other thing, Scott Bessent has been out there. I think I played the clip for you where he's like, yeah, we want to help China reorganize their economy to a more consumer-based economy like ours. And, we need to reshuffle how the balance. And we're just doing this out the kindness of our heart because we're loving light. We're the city on the hill. We just want to do the best for other countries. We're just trying to help China. We're offering a helping hand. It's like, okay, dude, just shut up right now, right? It's like nobody believes that you're trying to do this. You are literally having a tariff war where you put tariffs up to 145%. And you are standing there with tariffs at 145%, and we're just trying to help China out. Get out of here with that nonsense, right? So what with that framing that they're going with, even if they drop it to 0 just to start negotiations, what does that even look like? I don't even have a frame of reference. It's one thing if they make a trade deal with the UK. Okay, well, from my understanding, the UK had a trade surplus with the US, meaning they were buying more from us than vice versa. Yeah. Something to that effect. Yeah. It was basically, the tariffs was at 1%. It was some ridiculously low level. And so the UK was already in a vulnerable position because they pulled away from the European Union. So they were out there with the ass out.
UK wanted to do UK wanted to do deal with United States because they screwed themselves with the Brexit. They screwed themselves by cutting themselves with EU. So they want to deal with United States. This is why Trump decided. This is why Trump decided to deal with them first, because this is the easy picking, right? The UK, they're the supplicant. They basically offered themselves on a silver platter, please do a deal with us. And Trump is like, okay, this is a big win. It's a big country. It's a big respected country. And I'm like, I did not know UK is a big country or respected, but okay, okay. I mean, and this will not move a needle in terms of the real problem really is of China. Our trade embargo is really with China. This is amazing because
exactly that's my point.
if China had done a trade embargo on the United States like a year ago, Washington would have declared war. That's an act of war. But except like this time, it's Trump that signed an executive order embargo United States himself. It's just really amazing. I mean, like,
And by the
this
way,
is,
just be
you
clear,
know, I'm not.
that is not even a deal with the UK. That's a framework for a deal. And if you remember in one of the meetings, they asked about the cows or something. And it was like, well, hey, you know, they can't take your cows because of all the chemicals that we put into our cows and chickens and stuff like that. And Trump was like, yeah, Bobby's working on that, which implicitly points out, yes, this shit is full of chemicals that they can't sell to the UK or for that matter, the EU. Then the guy comes in, we have big, beautiful cows. Our cows are top of the line. Americans don't realize this. Our meats and stuff cannot be sold into the European Union because of all the gunk and stuff we put into our meats. Like we put like antibiotics in our when we do our chickens, just for the American public, just in case they don't know, we pack them in so tightly that they don't have room to move. And so they would pet the other chickens to death just to get room to move. So we fill them with antibiotics because they're standing in shit all day. Then we pack them with like Benadryl to calm them down. Then we give them uppers so they can continuously eat all day. Like
And
this
growth
is
hormones.
yeah, and growth
And
hormones to make them fat.
I mean, from egg to like the chicken breast on your dinner plate, 35 days. 35 days from the egg to what you had to eat for dinner. And when my wife came to visit United States with me 2 years ago, when I brought her to meet my parents, and the first thing she noticed is like the chicken has no taste in US. This chicken is tasteless. I'm like, what do you expect, man? They raised that chicken in 35 days. You know, you're asking too much for taste. This is not the Indonesian chicken.
That's magic. Yeah. Oh man. I mean, I felt that way when I was in abroad too. Like the food tastes different.
Yes.
And look, as an American, I would say it is annoying to me as an American sometimes because, you know, for us, when you go to our stores, my ex-girlfriend, she's from Austria, and she comes into an American grocery store. She says, oh my God, it's so big. And you look at the bread aisle, they're like, you know, an entire aisle of all these different types of breads, honey wheat, honey, multigrain, etc. And then you look at the bacon and they're like 20 different brands of bacon, honey, brown sugar. And then in Europe, it's like bacon. It's like one or two brands, right?
Yeah. But then you buy it home, and then you take it home, then you put it in your mouth, and you're like,
it tastes different.
Where's the taste? Where's the taste? Like my I mean, like I have to tell you, Jamar, even American fast food tastes better outside of the United States. McDonald's. KFC tastes better in China. McDonald's tastes better in Indonesia. Coca-Cola tastes better outside the United States. You know why?
It depends on where, though.
Oh, it depends on where. But in Indonesia, the Coca-Cola tastes good because they use real cane sugar rather than that high fructose corn syrup crap we use back home. It's totally different. That, you know, it's like the real cane sugar tastes so much better than high fructose corn syrup, but
it does.
You know, we got the farm lobby to please. So
you're right. You're totally right on that. The best McDonald's I've ever been to, believe it or not, India. I shocked the hell out. Like,
I believe
it was very clean. The people used to come and take your plates up, and so you know you leave it and they just come and take it. The food was fantastic. The soda didn't taste good for whatever particular reason, but it was almost like a regular restaurant. It was very strange. It caught me off guard, to be honest.
Yeah, it's upscale. It's like in McDonald's in Indonesia too. It's like it's kind of hip place where the youngsters go on for dates and stuff. You know, like it's.
Okay, I'm sorry. We've totally gotten off base on this one. Let me ask you this: what kind of deal can they come to? Like, let's say the U.S. says, "Okay, we'll drop this to zero just so we can start the negotiations, start talking." China has already said we are equals, so none of this, you know, your dominant shit. Nope, that's not the way we're dealing with this. We're dealing with this as equals. with Scott Vincent and Peter Navarro, whose sole objective is to effectively destroy the Chinese economy so the US can regain some kind of hegemonic control. China knows that going into the negotiations. So what kind of deal can they even come to? Like, I can't wrap my head around it. As you point out, the UK was a supplicant. They needed a deal. China is a different animal.
Well, first, the White House need to articulate what the heck they want, right? I mean, they couldn't do that with Japan. I don't see how they could do that with China. Like, what do you guys actually want? I mean, like, Trump said he wanted to reduce the deficit. Well,
Right.
Guess what? There are goods that China want to buy from the United States, but you're banning them from buying. Well, I'm talking about all the high-tech items. They want to buy GPUs from NVIDIA, and you just passed a law said, no, we're not going to let NVIDIA sell GPU chips to China. I mean, that's what China really want to buy. So you're telling them, no, you can only buy soybean and corn. I mean, there's only so much soybean and corn China can buy from the United States, and that's not going to make up for the difference, right? I mean, it's all the so basically, China end up with all these surplus dollars, and they can't spend. They can't spend because United States government wouldn't let them. And what U.S. want them to spend on is U.S. treasuries. This is why in the past, U.S. Treasury Secretary like Janet Yellen keep on going to China, begging for them keep on buying our debts. But China has realized this is a losing proposition because what are we doing? We're just taking all these IOUs and then go on and finance U.S. Military expeditions.
Right.
What's in it for us? This is why they started the whole Belt and Road Initiative, so that they can invest those dollars in more productive investment by building connectivity, building ports, infrastructures, so they can increase their trade with the rest of the world. And they will likely keep doing that. At one point, China had $1.4 trillion worth of US treasury.
Serious?
Yes.
Wow.
But today, it's only down to 700 billion. It's almost down to half. And China is not even selling the treasury. They're just holding the existing bonds they have to maturity, but they're just not buying any new ones. But U.S. want China to invest their surplus dollar into the U.S. Treasury, so U.S. can keep on living on low interest rate, can keep on going spending, and I don't think that's what China wants to do. So I mean, there's kind of fundamental differences. I mean, I don't see how that can be resolved. Unless Scott Bils propose some kind of innovative way to resolve this contradiction, because they don't want to tell China what China actually wants, which is U.S. high-tech products, because they say, China is going to use that to develop the military, and so we don't want you to have it because we got to maintain our 6-month lead in AI development or whatever, which is probably not even true anymore. And so yeah, what it's give and take, right? And I don't know what U.S. plan to give, because so far from trade negotiations U.S. conducted with other countries, it's all big stick, no carrots. They're like, if you don't do what I say, I will increase the tariff. It's not like, okay, we be buddy, I'll give you a lot of shitloads of money as investment, at least to replace your loss for not doing business with China. They're not even doing that. They're just saying you got to stop doing business with China, and then otherwise we're going to increase your tariff. I mean, this is why this turns a lot of countries off, because they don't want it to make that decision. They don't want to choose. And so here we are. So I don't know. I think people in Washington have to do a serious reevaluation of the true position of United States vis-a-vis China in relative terms, because right now they're not. I think the problem is that the people in Washington, they have been imbibing too much of their own propaganda, right? I mean, U.S. is great at propaganda because U.S. invented marketing, right? Madison Street. But the problem is when your own leaders start to consume the same propaganda, this is why whenever they talk about China, it's like this echo chamber, right? You know, you have people like Noah Smith acting like the China expert, but he never been to China, mainland China. He told me himself, and then all he know about China is what he read in the mainstream media. So he's just regurgitating, and then somehow those same spiel get regurgitated through like people's likes of Gordon Chan to the year of Peter Navarro, Scott Besson, and they have a very distorted view of what actually China is. And this is why they think China must need to come to deal with us. They need this more than us. Well, that's why China hasn't been calling, you know, like they're like, you know, you're right. It's too much. You know, we need the deal, but just not with you guys. We need deal with other people.
Yeah, it's like Britain. You know, the sun never sets on the British Empire. Yes, it does. You're a little country that at this point was a supplicant to the United States. Like,
see, this is the thing, Jamar. British people actually live much better after they have given up the empire, you know, than before, than when they were the empire. I mean, this could be America too. Americans can live a very comfortable life if they just stop wasting resources, waging endless wars around the world, trying to maintain the U.S. hegemony. And when the U.S. hegemony is actually not doing anything for the average Joe Six-Packs in Michigan, you know, if anything, it's screwing them up the ass.
But see, what I'm talking about is the mindset. Yeah. Like, for example, when Donald Trump, let's say, deals with Russia, for example. Okay, we've lost that war. Donald Trump acknowledges it was a proxy war. Donald Trump also acknowledges if it keeps going, Russia's going to take all of Ukraine. And yet, despite the fact that that implicit acknowledgement of a failure of U.S. power, he still comes at it from the position of authority, saying, well, this is our plan that we're offering. Last final offer. Dude, losers don't get to dictate terms. Like the notion that the Nazis would be able to turn to the Allies and say, so this is what we want in order to end the war. How do you do that, right? But again, it's an American president. The media space is going to scream at him if he doesn't behave that way. And they'll be like, I can't believe that American president, he's capitulating. Yep. It's the way we think. And so when he's dealing with China, it's the exact reason that he thought, representing 5% of the total population of the globe, that he was able to have a trade war with the entire world. Like, that is some outrageous shit, right? But that is the way we think. It's in our minds.
Yeah, unfortunately, you're right. Absolutely.
Carl, man, thank you for this. I really do appreciate it. Like I said, I learn something new every day. I love your historical breakdown. I don't know how many people would know that. You should teach a class on that. I know you have your videos with it, but Lord knows that is.
I have a podcast, Jamar. I run a podcast.
I know, but I'm saying that should be in schools because we don't. We lose something when we don't know that. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like if you don't know that China was the sacrifice that they made, then your point of view is skewed. Like you lose something in knowing that. You may know, okay, the Soviets gave a huge amount, but it gets contorted into this notion of, yeah, the Soviets were there and the French were there, but America. That was the deciding factor. We lost 200,000 people in that war, compared to like 30 million Russians, 20 million more Chinese. Like the sacrifice, there's the weight of it. It's not given in a way that we can understand it. It's lagging. And like I told you, I don't even remember China being mentioned in our history courses when we were going over the war. Like it's.
Hey, you remember the Pearl Harbor movies, right? In the Pearl Harbor movies, there's a part where they have to crash the Doolittle raid over Tokyo. They have to crash land their plane in China, and those American pilots were saved by the Chinese. So so people who, at least if they have watched Pearl Harbor, they at least somewhat peripherally aware, China play a role in World War II.
It's like there were 3 Chinese people there in the war. Carl, man, thank you for this, man. Carl Jha.
Yeah.
Carl Jha is host of Silk and Steel podcasts, focused on China and surrounding regions and their history, culture, and politics. You can follow Carl on Twitter at Carl Jha. Follow his podcast on Twitter at Steel Silk N. Subscribe and support the podcast on patreon.com, Silk and Steel. Carl, is there anywhere else people can find you, by the way? And when is your next broadcast?
I am a prolific shit poster on Twitter. Oh yeah, you already gave my Twitter handle. I have a YouTube channel, Carl Jha. It's my same handle, Carl Jha. And I do on my Patreon site for my subscriber. I'm doing a chronological rundown of Chinese history. Currently, I'm at 450 BC. So that's like 30 years after the death of Confucius. I'm already covered like almost half of the Chinese history, folks. I just have another 2,500 years to go.
I am going to have to subscribe to your channel. There's this great history channel that does First World War, Second World War, intervening years, and they do week by week by week, starting at the let's say in the very beginning, going all the way through the war of the events that took place that exact week. It is phenomenal. It is just phenomenal. So I love stuff like that. I'm going to have to check out your Patreon.
Definitely. I was doing year by year. I was doing year by year of the Chinese history. What happened in the year 478 BC.
Carl, you're being lazy, man. You got to do week by week for 4,000 years, for 5,000 years of history every week. And this week, Confucius said this, and then go to next week for 5,000 years. No, man, I'm going to have to check that out. I am a sucker for that stuff. I am a sucker for it. I love it. Carl, man, thank you for this. I really do appreciate it. Great show. We have a great cast. We had up to 730 people, and it just kept ticking up and up and up every time you open your mouth. Thank you for this. Be safe, man.
Thank you, Jamar. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Anytime.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Carl Jha, that was a fantastic breakdown. And we are going from one fantastic guest to another.
You didn't
Sarah
need me to
Bils.
come on. Carl could have helped the rest of the show along. That he could talk.
No. This show is planned with I was about to say German precision. This is poor timing to say that, right? But just trains on thing, 7:30, 8 o'clock, 8:30, etc. I've gotten good at it. Man, in the very beginning, I used to fuck it up with the best of them. And even now, every so often, Laith was supposed to be on the show on Monday. And I tried to be fancy. Usually, I just tell people Eastern time. That way, everybody's on the same thing. And I tried to get fancy. It was okay, I will tell people their own time zones. Fucked it up royally. Screwed it up completely. So now I went back to, Eastern time, Eastern Standard. And as somebody pointed out to me, hey, Jamal, I know you like to be accurate. So it's not Eastern Standard Time anymore because we've had daylight saving time. So it's Eastern Daylight. So, okay, dude, thank you. I appreciate that. And he's right, by the way, in which case I started just saying ET. That's I try to be accurate. Sarah, welcome to the show. Sarah Bils. Sarah Bils, she is host or independent journalist, U.S. Navy veteran, and co-founder of DD Geopolitics. That is a fantastic, they have, I think, YouTube channel and Twitter. I usually see you on Twitter more than anything else with these kind of breakdown of stories. I use them religiously. Thank you for this.
Thanks.
I love it. It is a fantastic breakdown because it gives you these news bites where you can go and get more information, but it's just enough to whet your appetite where you're oh, that's happening right now. And it feeds my thing constantly. So you have been a fantastic help for this show. And I appreciate you existing in general.
Excuse me. Yeah, thank you.
There is, I want to get your take on something. So there's reporting, and I'm probably going to be asking a few people to get their takes because I am almost certain people are going to have different points of view on this. This came up right here. Apparently, U.S. President Donald Trump has cut ties or cut contact with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, accusing him and his allies of acting arrogantly and trying to push him around. And hey, man, you can't push Donald Trump around like that. That's Big Papa. He's not gonna. His ego weighs 1 billion pounds. You can't budge that, right? According to Israeli Army radio, Trump feels disrespected. I'm feeling neglected. That's why I'm leaving you. And manipulated by Netanyahu. His close associates told Israeli Minister Ron Dermer that Trump hates nothing more than appearing easily manipulated to the public. Now, I don't doubt that, right? I would imagine that's true. In fact, I remember early on, before Trump even got elected, I was like, there is no way Trump is going to allow himself to look weak and absurd as Joe Biden looked over the course of his administration. Netanyahu seemed to have went out of his way to humiliate Joe Biden over and over and over again. Part of it is because he was waiting for Trump. But the other part of it was Joe Biden was basically a cadaver. And so, it's like, how hard is it to drag Bernie, to put him in the car and drag Bernie to wherever you're going to put Weekend at Bernie's? Trump's ego is not going to allow that. And when you get Walsh, who's effectively an Israeli spy, giving secrets over to the Israelis and discussing with Netanyahu plans to attack Iran while Donald Trump supposedly was having negotiations. Okay, well, that looks bad. That's kind of humiliating. By the same token, I don't really trust this. Joe Biden.
Thank you.
Yeah, Joe
I
Biden
was
is
going
doing
to have
this.
to be the one that says, "Come on, Jamal."
Yeah, that was the way I looked at it. Oh, right. You're about to say, okay, yeah. Well, I was trying to give like the primer for it before
Well,
I
I mean,
twisted
when I saw the statement, I was like, this is so theatrical and ridiculous. And then this morning, I mean, I've just woken up, so I haven't gotten a lot of time to go through the news, but I saw some news bites my partner just sent me that said that Pete Hegseth was removing the normalization with Israel out of the negotiations with Saudi. Yep. I don't buy this. I mean, they might be, but this is them distancing themselves personally from the imminent Israeli attack on Iran.
Right there. Okay, so we're on the same page on this.
Yes.
We're on the same page. I kept thinking the same thing. I kept saying, okay, so Hegseth at one point said, we're going to attack Iran. Netanyahu says we're going to attack Iran. Trump has associated everything associated with the Houthis with Iran. They've broken off negotiations with Iran. And regardless of all of this stuff, Iran is freaking out and is getting far more aggressive with their warnings to the United States, meaning they don't even buy it. Like Iran comes out and says, we will open the gates of hell if Israel or the United States attack us. Iran has been showing that, hey, we're paying attention to your warships. We see them. Our drones are keeping track of all of this stuff. And even in this video, what they're showing is an underground missile base that can basically fire off missiles, even if they're hit. So Iran wasn't doing this during negotiations. Iran started doing this now because Iran believes, I would argue, that an attack is imminent and that the U.S. wants to say, hey, we didn't have anything to do with it.
Correct.
I didn't
even talk to Bibi. I'm not even talking to Bibi. Look, I made an announcement. We're not even talking.
Right. It's like the article says we weren't talking till we cut ties.
I told you a week before.
Yeah.
We weren't talking. It seems very frantic and very exactly. It seems like theater.
Yeah. Okay. So you have the same conclusion on that.
Yeah. I did it at first because it was coming from IDF radio. So I was like, okay, this is probably over dramatized. The Israelis are probably, trying to make this seem bigger than it was. And I was like, maybe he's just miffed at Bibi because he does get like that. But then as more came out, I was like, oh, this is. And then when I saw this morning about Pete Hegseth, I was like, this is just full on theater.
Yeah. It's too intense.
Yeah, it's too much.
It's coming from all corners.
Yeah, the lady don't protest too much is what it is. It's like you guys are acting crazy and you're giving a tell. You're letting us know something is coming because you're acting a little bit too irrational, even for you guys.
Yeah.
I mean, they have to. Do they not understand? Like that we know our relationship with Israel. Like, we know you're not going to leave Israel in the lurch if they're getting ready to attack Iran. You're not going to do that.
And you're still giving them bombs, bullets, money. You're still doing all of this stuff. It's one thing if it's like, we've cut ties with Israel and we stopped giving them money and bombs. Okay, well, that's different. This seems very intense. Like, I can see if it was, I'll give an example. When the New York Times, for example, would write an article and it would say, well, Donald Trump doesn't want to step away from the Ukraine thing because he doesn't want to get blamed for it. Okay, but that's kind of like, paragraph 5 in an article that's written by the New York Times and it's kind of dry language. Okay, I can believe that. That makes sense to me because that's exactly what's happening right now. This is out the blue and is being like to a very high volume with all of these corners repeating the same words. Cut, what is it? Cut ties or cut contact? Cut contact. Cut
yeah,
contact.
not cut ties. No, contact. Yeah. Even so, they worded it in such a way that it's like Trump personally cut contact with Bibi personally. None of that matters. Doesn't matter if those two talk or not. That's all it was. It was meant to be an insult. People took it, stupid Americans took it the wrong way and were like, he's cutting off the talks with this. No, he's cutting off his direct contact with Bibi. That's it. That's an easy thing to do to distance himself from whatever's about to happen. He did the easiest thing he could. It was smart politically, but it's not, people aren't going to buy it.
I think they will. Believe it or not, I think here's the thing. So if you remember, a few things took place. One was with the Houthis, where Donald Trump effectively supposedly made a deal with the Houthis. Mm-hmm. And they asked him about, say, hey, well, you cut a deal saying a truce between you, but the Houthis saying they're still hitting Israel.
They're hitting it right now as we speak.
Exactly. And Donald Trump was like, well, I don't have anything to do with that.
Yeah.
They just know they're not going to hit us.
Come on now, right? Like, come on.
Well,
I don't have anything to do with it. Okay, sure. You just bombed, they bombed the hell out of Yemen, right? And now Yemen's retaliating on Israel, and rightfully so, but you have nothing to say about it?
He said, we don't have anything to do with it. And so we're leaving.
I read that last night. It was like, unless they hit our stuff, we're not bothering. Come on now.
Exactly.
I don't believe that either.
So what Laith pointed out, Laith thing was, okay, well, the U.S. is going to act as if Israel is hitting them, when really it's the U.S. is continuing to hit them. Basically setting up this context of, we didn't have anything to do with any of this stuff. We broke ties with Israel. They hit Iran. And to your point, I don't believe for a moment that Israel will hit Iran without the U.S. permission. Yeah. I mean, even in the negotiation thing in the New York Times, if you remember, he brings Netanyahu here and tells him, we're not going to attack Iran, which means neither are you. So any attack on Iran is on some level greenlit by the United States. I mean, it's proof of concept just in the New York Times by itself.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I don't think that this is going to work, but they can try to distance themselves from it. It's clear that Iran knows something is up, and coming off of a negotiation with you, I don't buy for a second that Trump would go in and negotiate with the Houthis sans Israel at all. I don't believe that. I'm sorry. I just don't. Like, why would, all you have to do to negotiate with the Houthis is to not put your ships in the way of their fire. You don't need to do anything else. There's no ceasefire needed. And the only thing Israel needs to do to stop being bombed is to stop bombing Gaza. And that's not going to happen. So what are we talking about? Like, oh, we made a deal with the Houthis. What, that you're not going to go in their waters? Like, that's what you should have done from the beginning. That's not a deal.
Well, there's more, actually.
Go ahead.
So the cradle, so apparently the Israeli lobby is getting involved in Congress to kill any deal that Trump makes either with the Saudis or the Iranians. Like, meaning there are multiple data points of trying to get across this notion of, okay, there's some conflict between the United States and Israel now. And one of those data points is congressional pressure using AIPAC or using the lobby to say, hey, you can't get anything done without our support, which is, aggravating to me as an American that this foreign country is effectively affecting our politics, but whatever. Apparently, a video has been put out of Israel going after Trump, trying
Whoa.
to get him.
Oh, come on.
I'm serious.
No, I
It's
mean,
like-
I don't believe that either. I mean, it exists, but I don't believe that it's genuine.
Yeah. And Drop Zone News is reporting, I'll show this one too while we're at it. I'll show all the data points that are available.
Thank you, because I'm not caught up.
Okay. So Trump announced Gaza deal with minimal Israeli input, says Israeli report. And they are effectively saying that they're coming up with this comprehensive framework for Gaza. Now, I think this piggybacks on this notion that the United States is going to administer the concentration camp in Gaza. And that I'll just read it. The initial phase would involve the U.S. helping manage aid distribution via Israeli-built supply centers. Later stages would include U.S. and Arab oversight over Gaza's reconstruction. The plan envisions an eventual Israeli military withdrawal alongside partial dismantlement or disarmament process of Hamas fighters. So basically, trying to disarm Hamas and controlling the area. Resistance from Hamas. Well, obviously, Hamas doesn't believe anything that you're saying, considering you had a deal when you first got in and you let Israel violate the entire deal. Mm-hmm. So what it sounds like from Hamas's point of view, okay, you want to disarm us, make us defenseless, and they're going to kill us when you finish, right? They're not the same for thinking that. So it's a key concessions under consideration. The deal would allow Hamas leadership to remain involved in Gaza's future civil governance and possibly grant immunity from assassination. Immunity from assassination. It's like, geez, that is wild when you think about that. When you read this, like, whoa.
I'm not exactly. Your reaction tells me that it's probably not real. It's so far removed from anything that we've ever seen. I just don't. Trump he is too ingratiated, and he owes the Israeli lobby and the Zionists way too much because of their donations to his campaign. I'm sorry, but Israelis, Jews in general, are the biggest theater kids. So it's like they're so dramatic. I just don't I don't buy this. It's too over the top.
And all of it is coming out within a day.
Yeah, 24 hours, less than 24 hours is all coming out.
When I woke up this morning, I saw it was item.
Yes. I'm still catching up. As I'm talking to you, it's crazy. Alongside the victory parade. Plus he is seething over that victory parade. He is pissed. He is so jealous. It's so funny. He's announced 2 victory days, a victory parade, since this all started. So he's just going crazy in general. He's pissed. He's so jealous. None of his plans have worked. The thing with China backfired. We've gone from he said 100 and something countries. He said more than the total number of countries. Anyway, we're negotiating with him, and we've whittled that all the way down to 1 with the UK. That doesn't matter because we have a trade surplus with them anyway. What are we doing? So unless he's listening to them to circle back, maybe there's a chance, a slight, small chance that he's listening to his base, not that he's doing where he's making it appear that he's doing what they want him to do, because there's still a very strong pushback against Israel. There's a lot of that anti-Semitism stuff that, backlash and all of that. So there could be that. I mean, that's another options that I could maybe think of, but that's about it. I just don't see any reason why this would be true. You're muted.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm very skeptical. I mean, I was cynical of these negotiations in the first place. Part of me was slightly optimistic that my cynicism was wrong. Because, cynicism can be every bit as much of a bias as anything else. It's just, and so I was like, okay, he sent Wickoff. Maybe in his mind, he wants a deal. By the same token, you're surrounded by neocons, and they keep pushing you to maximize or maximize what your wants are, which is going to kill the deal. And so it's kind of like, okay, the moment that Wickoff gets delegitimized, they're attacking him left and right. The moment I start hearing Rubio pipe up, we need basically a Libyan option. I'm like, oh, okay, we're screwed. Like this is going nowhere. Like this is bad.
That's the thing that contradicts it all, right? The neocons are in office. Waltz was removed. He's not a neocon, though. He's a huge Israeli shill. And his rumored replacement is Stephen Miller, who is the biggest Iran hardliner that we have. So it's like, you're not, it's what you're doing. Your actions are betraying your words in a way. These guys, the only person that's against striking of Iran in any form or fashion, well, there's two, in a form or fashion, is Tulsi Gabbard, who has no say. She's been completely like pushed to the side. And Pete Hegseth. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's that. Look, I've had people on the show who were very optimistic. And I guess my thing is looking at it through the context of history. And you can look at all of these other countries, Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Libya, Sudan is a basket case, and the last man standing is Iran. And it didn't matter the president. It might have taken 20, 30 years, but we've finally got to Iran with a government full of Zionists and with a president that has given Israel a full license to do whatever they want. Hey, if you want to take down city blocks, have at it. If you want to murder children, have at it. If you want to openly starve 2 million people, no issue. We'd even go to the ICJ and argue that you have the right to starve 2 million people, which, by the way, they did a week ago. And so it's like, okay, so a week ago, you're arguing that Israel has every right to starve 2 million people to death. Children, women and children, 2/3 of which women and children, right? Baby. The images that are coming out of kids as skeletons are heartbreaking. But our president has just argued that it's perfectly okay. And so a week later, you're like, I'm not talking to Bibi now.
Also, I think Mike Huckabee released some sort of statement that was kind of anti-Israel. And I was like, now I know this is a lie because he would never even sneeze at Israel the wrong way. So it was like, you guys have just screwed the pooch. I think his statement came out either today. I can't even remember. It's all a blur.
He's talking about Yemen.
Either late last night or early this morning. And I'm like,
yeah, he was talking about Yemen. He effectively said the United States doesn't need Israel permission.
Yes, that's it. If they they don't need our permission. Yeah. And I'm like, come on now. This guy's one of the biggest like hardliner Christian evangelicals in the country, especially in politics. So I was like, those words would never come out of his mouth sincerely. They're liars and they're not good at it. They're terrible liars. That's what I've been saying a little bit about this administration, is that there's no desire to even formulate a coherent story or a lie that's believable. They just lie, and you're like, I can check that right now. I could literally have AI listen to your speech and fact check you as you're talking. They just say the most asinine things, and the base just kind of says, well, they're just saying those things to see how people react. It's just, they just lie all the time. All they do is lie. It's bizarre. I've never seen, at least we've talked about it before, I think you and I, where we're like, Joe Biden kind of dressed it up, and I'd rather have the one that kind of lies to my face and I can figure it out. And it's at the same time, it's like, or Garland, actually, I think I talked to him about this, but I don't agree. I feel like my intelligence is being insulted. At least let me try to figure it out a little bit. Like, I know you're not telling the truth. Like, how are you going to sit there and say, like, Xi is calling, and Xi is literally making statements saying he's not calling. They haven't spoken on the phone. And then you're like, well, you know, maybe, you know, you're like, why lie?
It is very bizarre. I've never seen anything like it.
It's like pathological lying. It's lying for no reason.
All presidents lie, but this is different.
Exactly.
Like this is, yeah, this is very different. I can't, like, it's hard to explain. It's one thing if you tell me, like, I always say Donald Trump is amoral to the truth.
Yes, I agree.
And so it's like, it could be raining outside. He's like, it's a sunny day. And you're like, dude, the window is open. What are you talking about?
And then if you say that, he'll be like, well, you know. Like, he doesn't even care that he's caught in the lie either. Well,
it's weird. Like, I remember when he was doing that interview, and she said, he's like, oh, the other countries pay for tariffs. We don't have to pay for tariffs. And it's like, Yes, we do. What are you talking about? And she asks them, she says, he says, yeah, kids should be able to get away with not having $30 babies. First, who's buying $30 babies, right? But okay. She's like, they should be able to get by with 3. And the reporter was like, so you admit the tariffs are going to increase prices because otherwise they can get the $30 babies. Well, no, I don't admit that. But you just admitted it. Like, it's a very bizarre administration in the way that they do this. And it's terrifying on some level because it means that what happens doesn't really matter. They just lie. Like, it could, eggs, he was like, eggs have gone down. No, they haven't.
No, they haven't.
No,
Gas
they
has
haven't.
gone
And
down. No, it
yeah,
hasn't. Not anything substantial. Not anything than
yeah.
a normal fluctuation.
Also, Donald Trump is not making groceries.
Like
It's stuff like that. It's just weird. No,
oh,
I
but
agree with you.
Caroline Levitt brings her baby to the office. See, it's like these little stupid things that they give us, right?
Yeah.
Like these little feel good or rah moments, and then it's like back to the BS. And I was actually hopeful for Trump. I really was. And I'm not saying that I've lost all hope, but this is looking really bleak. I was
Hopeful in
very
what way? Explain that. Because on the domestic front, I had no
thought that
hope.
we needed a big change. I did, and I thought that he
That I
would
agree.
kind of accelerate us in a way that was kind of sustainable, or in a way that wasn't so shocking. He was
Wait,
kind of
explain that part. Accelerate us.
because I think that he's an accelerationist without knowing it. He's accelerating us into either multipolarity or into an inevitable break, which is it was inevitable anyway before Trump even came about. So I just was kind of looking at it from like a bright side. There's a silver lining. Like that's how I was looking at it. And now I'm just like, you're such a mess. Like you can't even get it like together. Like what? Like where are the Epstein files?
Yeah.
Where are the mass deport? Not that I'm saying that I necessarily want those things. These are things that you campaigned on. Where are the mass deportations? You're offering people $1,000 to leave, $1,000 in a plane ticket. You are desperate, bro. That's desperation. Like, what's really going on? What is happening? They want a $1 trillion military budget, and now Doge has cut their goal down to 150 million from 1 trillion or 150 billion. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy. And it's just like, it's such a bait and switch. I feel bad for MAGA diehards. I really do. Because they have to figure out how to do the mental gymnastics to excuse this.
Well, they're like liberals. They're cultists.
They really are.
I just consider them in a cult. And I am terrified of people who are in cults. Reality doesn't matter. Dear leader says this. Joe Biden is, sharp as a tack. Like that nonsense, right?
Right.
And Obama didn't have to give $1,000. Obama just deported like 3 million people or some insane number.
Exactly.
So it does reek of desperation to say, I'll give you $1,000 to leave. Give me $1,000. Give me $1,000. I'll leave. I mean, I'll come back because I'm American, but give me $1,000. Like it reeks of desperation. And then he says, well, we have so many people that the courts can't handle them all, so we just need to blow off due process.
We're arresting judges.
It's like you have so many people. So let's say you have 2 million people. So you're going to give 2 million people $1,000 or 5 million people $1,000. Like it's so ludicrous. Like I don't even know how you do that from the executive branch. How does the executive branch have the power to give $1,000 to anybody? It's just weird. That's a legislation thing.
Right.
It's just weird. It's very bizarre. What do you think is going to happen if they hit Iran? Because under our model of thinking about it, the U.S. is going to be like, we had nothing to do with it. We had nothing to do with it. That was all Israel. So, this kind of which path to Israel or path to Persia, it's kind of that. Okay, we allow Israel to hit Iran, but we act like we didn't have anything to do with it, and we were in negotiations, and so our hands are clean. But Israel is an attack dog force. What do you think happens after that attack, though?
Well, first we need to address what the attack might be. I really think that it's going to be death by 1,000 cuts. I think that there might be some Israeli influence or fault for these recent fires and explosions in Iran. Israel likes to do death by 1,000 cuts. Iran debuted a new missile this week. They said that they used the lessons that they learned from dealing with Israel and True Promise 2 to build this missile. And Israel didn't intercept anything. So does Israel really want a huge retaliation? Another thing that's either suspicious or interesting, however you take it, is that Israel's blaming American air defense systems for failures. That when the missile hit Ben Gurion Airport, they said that was United States' fault because the air defense didn't activate. I don't know if they're setting up a scene for an Iranian retaliation to then blame the Americans that missiles got through.
Well, just be clear though, the missiles did fire; they just missed. Like the THAAD system that the U.S. had, Iron Dome, both just missed.
They missed, and they blamed the THAAD. Correct. So I don't know, that might be a way to be like, they hit us back, and your air defense didn't intercept it. That's exactly that's what they said this past time. They made sure they said American THAAD AD did not intercept the missile.
From my understanding, that missile was going at hypersonic speeds by the time that thing came back into the atmosphere.
Nothing's taking that thing down. They're just being that's just talk. And that's another thing. They know that nothing's taking that thing down. So why are you even saying that? It just feels like a setup for something later.
But see, that's the other interesting question. They know that they're going to get hit if they hit Iran, meaning they know that Iran can hit them and they can't stop them from being hit. And depending upon how they hit Iran, the response is going to be withering. Like, I get the sense that Iran is looking for a reason to go after Israel. That's the part I don't quite understand. Like, if you know you're vulnerable, why are you going to strike them in this way when you know you can't stop their response?
We're not dealing with a rational actor here in Israel.
Yeah.
We in the United States, there's some rationality left. This is not a rational actor at all. They want a total capitulation, and if it means the destruction of the Middle East, that's fine. They don't care. They will rule over the ashes. They are completely irrational. A country with a Samson option is not a rational actor in any sense of the word. Bibi's getting desperate. This was supposed to be like, this is what Bibi thinks he needs to save his political career and legacy. I don't think that they care about the consequences. They clearly don't care about their population at all. They don't care about the population of Gaza. They don't even care. They don't care about their own population. Why would it matter? They love when Israelis get hurt. They love it. It's a PR bonanza for the Israeli government.
What, telegenically dead Jews or Israelis?
Yeah, exactly. Like
that's what Netanyahu described.
And if Iran does it, all the better. All the better.
If Iran, would the U.S. Well, I guess that's two questions. Would they use the Samson option? First question, meaning, are they going to use nukes if they get hit in a very brutal, over-the-top, exaggerated way? And does the U.S. get involved? I mean, the U.S. may say, we didn't have anything to do with it, our hands are off of it. But certainly, there at Diego Garcia, they built up a massive military complex in Diego Garcia. Israel does not have the capacity to hit Iran in any way that is existential by themselves. I don't know how this. Yeah, I don't quite get it.
Because they're irrational, we have no idea how they'll react. I highly doubt they'll execute the Samson option, especially when things are going so well for them. They have made huge advances into Syria. They actually run the show in Syria right now. That government is a failure. Yeah. They're very far into Lebanon, as far as they need to be. Jordan's completely capitulated. Iraq is defanged. They don't want to get involved at all. The only people that they really have to deal with left are Iran and Yemen. And I think that they're on too much of a high swing or an upswing to do a Samson option over Iran. They've almost finished all of their countries. We're almost done. The 7 countries in 5 years. It took a little longer, but they're almost done. They only have Iran left. That's it. I don't think they're going to blow themselves up. I just don't.
I know, but any attack on Iran is going to be met with withering force. We know at this point that Iran has the capability of decimating Israel if they unleash. Up to this point, Iran has been extremely restrained, and that pragmatism has been taken for weakness. So I guess my thing is, this is a country of 80 million versus a country of 8 million. They would get decimated. And on some level, it will be existential for the state of Israel. The entire point of Israel, right? Safe haven for Jews.
Well,
It's no longer a safe haven.
that was blown out of the water.
Yeah, exactly. So so when would you use the Samson option? If not, like, I'll give you an example. When Mike Tyson bit Evander Holyfield's ear off and they kicked him out, but they were like, okay, but we're not gonna expel you from boxing. And people were like, okay, well, what do you need to do to expel somebody from boxing?
You're right.
This is kind of like that, right? It's like,
What do I need to do to get a Samson option around here?
Exactly. And I'm not
already.
I'm just asking, like, what would that take if not an existential attack by what they consider to be a mortal enemy? And if Israel is going to attack Israel, the response is going to be withering. And then this is a secondary question of, does the U.S. get involved? Like, I guess all of this, as you point out, this is very irrational for the state of Israel, because the state and any significant attack on Iran,
Well,
at least that's my thought. I could be
we're
wrong.
probably going to join in to prevent this this horrible retaliation on Israel. We'll probably do our best to mitigate that, I would think.
But how? We said our hands are off it.
We'll see. I mean, we say different things from 12 hours to 12 hours. We're not even day to day anymore. We're like, I can't even keep up anymore. I might have to do 2 or 3 shows a week, because by the Sunday to Sunday, I'm like, we have had like a decade in a week, as Lenin would say.
Yeah, it's so weird. Like, it seems suicidal, which is why look, my thing is, if I'm traveling, my mom will always say, I don't want you traveling to a war zone. She always like, is that place safe? Like, that's her first thought, right? Is the place safe? Because she knows me. I'll go anyway. And I always tell her, if I die on a trip, then I lose. Like, it's like, you can do all sorts of stuff, but if you die doing it, you lose. It kind of breaks the premise. I feel that way about countries too. If they are doing this, like, what comes back is unpredictable. I understand Netanyahu's an ideologue. I get it. But this is, I don't know. I don't know. I just don't have an answer to this one.
Neither do I. I mean, we're dealing with 2 very irrational actors, the United States and Israel.
Yeah. Wow. What do you think happens to the region? Does this embroil the region into just...
The region is screwed.
Well,
the only people that have any power left is Saudi, and their power is capitulated to the United States. That's it.
Yeah.
No one else has any power. UAE and Qatar are preoccupied with other projects. They're not going to get involved in this.
Wow. I want to move to domestic for a bit. I
Okay.
want to get you on something. One of your favorite presidents, at least from my understanding, I listened to one of your shows. You were over the moon on how great and effective he was as a president. He joined the ladies of The View. And in joining the ladies of The View, Joe Biden.
Oh, you were being sarcastic. I was like, what president is this? Ibrahim Traore? Like, who are we talking about? It must be somebody foreign.
Just in case the audience don't know. Listen to what he says here.
Oh my
He's
God, I
talking
can't believe
about
he's
heritage
still on
elections.
speaking engagements.
Mr. President, you had previously said that you thought that you would have won. Since then, Donald Trump won all the battleground states and made inroads with almost every major demographic, from working class voters to Hispanic men to Black men. Knowing what you know now, do you think you would have beat him?
Yeah, he still got 7 million fewer votes.
Yes.
There you go. Okay. A lot of people didn't show up. Number one. Number two, they're very close in those toss-up states. It was it wasn't a slam dunk.
Mr. President,
Still thinks he would have won.
I think that he might be right.
You think so?
Yeah, I think he might be right. He's
Why?
right that a lot of people did not show up. A lot of people that would be Biden voters did not show up at all. A lot of people were motivated to also remember, a lot of people were motivated to vote for Trump because of Kamala, not because he was Trump, but because he wasn't Kamala. And I don't think that you'd have the same thing for Joe Biden.
Are you serious? Even after that debate, and even after it became clear, like when it became clear that Joe Biden was out of his mind, and his polling just plummeted, and the thought was, okay, he's going to lose like 50 states. Like they were saying how bad he was polling and everything else was.
Maybe I'm just looking back with rose-colored glasses or something because we're in a bit of a mess.
I mean, you could be right. I guess I'm pushing back on it because he was so bad. Like his ability to speak, his ability to walk. Every time you let him go, he would wander off like old Yeller. And then you got like Obama coming out having a whisper campaign. You have Meloni in Italy having to walk him back because he seemed to just going off in the middle of nowhere. And this kept happening over and over, and the public kept seeing it over and over. Like, here's another question that Joe Biden got about his cognitive decline. Cognitive decline. Something that they hid, by the way, for the longest time. This is, I want to get your take on this one too. Might as well do it. Ladies of the View.
Mr. President, since you left office, there have been a number of books that have come out deeply sourced from Democratic sources that claim in your final year there was a dramatic decline in your cognitive abilities. In the final year of your presidency, what is your response to these allegations, or are these sources wrong?
They are wrong. There's nothing to sustain that. Number one. Number two, you know, think of what we're left with. We're left with a circumstance where we had an insurrection when I started. Not since the Civil War. We had a circumstance where we were in a position that the pandemic, because of the incompetence of the last outfit, end up over 1 million people dying. 1 million people dying. And we're also
Just to interrupt us real quick. More people died under Joe Biden, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
From COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, after Trump, people were still dying under Joe Biden's watch. It wasn't an insurrection, it was a riot. There's a difference in those things. I just want to point that out. But again, all presidents laugh, right? Just keep going.
in a situation where we found ourselves unable to deal with a lot of just basic issues, and which I won't go into in interest of time. And so we went to work, and we got it done. And you know, one of the things that well, and
Alyssa, you know.
One last point. Many of those people didn't show up because of Gaza.
That's true.
He's leaving this out. Like millions of people, when Drop Zone did this kind of analysis of reasons, the rationale that people were having, why they didn't show up to vote and so forth, Gaza was significant to the tune of millions of people that just said, I cannot vote for a party that is backing a genocide. That was under his watch. And so he is yada-yadaing that part out of it. He's not even bringing it up. And I want to play just this last part, just to make it clear. If you notice, he cannot even get his words out. He is stuttering and stammering, and Joe Biden has to come in to help him out.
We had an insurrection when I started. Not since the Civil War. We had a circumstance where we were in a position that the pandemic, because of the incompetence of the last outfit, end up over 1 million people dying. 1 million people dying. And we're also in a situation where we found ourselves unable to deal with a lot of just basic issues, and which I won't go into in interest of time. And so we went to work, and we got it done. And you know, one of the things and
Alyssa, you know, one of the things I think is that the people who wrote those books were not in the White House with us.
A question about cognitive decline. Joe Biden couldn't even finish his thought, and he trails off, and Joe Biden has to jump in. And I love these people who's like, Joe Biden has hard sex with his wife every week. Joe Biden is Trump his attack. Joe Biden is this and Joe Biden is that. And it's like, dude, we can look at this man. He can't even finish his sentence. Like his mind cannot even.
I mean, it doesn't matter what he can do. He's never going to be in politics again. He can do whatever he wants. Like, what is, you know what I mean? People are like, oh, he's viral, like, or he's viral. And I'm like,
he's viral.
And I'm like, what are you talking? It doesn't matter. Even if he was, even if he got up tomorrow and sung I'm Singing in the Rain, he's never going to be president again.
He's out there singing in the rain. I guess my point is, for one, shout out to her for asking that question. You get her she was stammering because it's probably very nervous to say, sir, are you out of your mind? Like, that's a very difficult thing to ask somebody, like, flat out. But his answer, basic things, is he yada yada in Gaza and the basic things?
Yeah, because he can get away with it.
But they should have brought that up though.
Yeah,
Sir,
but they won't because it's The View and he can get away with it.
I wish they would have asked that.
They probably aren't allowed, honestly.
But see, that's the question. It's like, but sir, millions of people didn't show up based on polling because you were supporting what they consider to be a genocide in Gaza. That's the question you need him to answer. Now, granted, he's going to trail off again, but at the very least for the first 20 seconds, he'll try.
Yeah.
That's frustrating to me to hear that. Like, it was frustrating to me to hear Elizabeth Warren like laugh it off when the guy was going after her for it, saying, well, wait a minute, you were lying to the American public about his mental fitness. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because they told us that Donald Trump was the end of democracy. They told us that Donald Trump was going to shoot Liz Cheney in the face. He was a fascist. He was Hitler, meaning he is the end of all things. He is Satan incarnate. And yet, they didn't have a primary. He didn't step down to allow a primary. He intentionally put in Kamala Harris when he came out with his speech saying, Kamala Harris is going to be my pick, even though part of the reason that Joe Biden was staying in is because they didn't believe Kamala Harris could win. Like, these were things that the Democratic Party did that created a situation where they couldn't even have a legit primary for the public to choose who they wanted. And he is still sitting here saying, yeah, I think I would have beat him, and my cognitive fitness is perfectly fine.
Okay, now I agree. When you explain it that way, he's not winning against
Trump. You agree with me?
He's not winning against Trump. That's for sure. There was a lot of backing for Trump in the trenches, I want to say. Like, there was a lot of influencers and a lot of kind of that stuff, and Joe Biden just doesn't have that kind of pull.
Yeah. Sarah, oh wow, we've gone over. Sarah, thank you.
I thought so. I was like, am I doing an hour or 30 minutes?
No, I looked at the clock. As it gets to the end of the show, I'm just having conversations with my guests at a certain point. And with guests I really like, sometimes it just
thank you.
Yeah. Ted Rawl is like that too, or Peter Coffin. Sometimes we were just talking, and we started talking about David Chappelle, and that thing went like 30 minutes. Thank you for this. By the way, what's the latest article that you guys have written, or what's the latest thing that you guys have
I only did the thread recently on the Trump Sons crypto Eastern European crypto tour extravaganza. It's my pinned post on DDG on Twitter. So if you want to check it out, it's pretty interesting. The criminal elements that the Trump kids are getting involved with in order to push their family's new crypto venture, World Liberty Financial, which is just, it's incredible what they're doing.
They're monetizing the White House. Everybody,
correct.
Hunter Biden was monetizing the White House.
Isn't in on it. His for all intents and purposes.
Wait, did you say he is or is not?
Isn't right. He's not in on it, but his face is on every single web page, every single brochure. So it's like it's.
Wait a minute. Why do you think Trump is not in on it?
I'm saying he has to say that he's not. that he's
Okay.
not in on it. In other words,
But
So
just to be
they're
clear, though, as president of the United States,
Oh,
he, for
obviously.
the first time, initiated the U.S. holding crypto assets.
This is part of it. This is part of it.
And by the way, he did that in order to stabilize the market.
Yeah, they have a stable coin USD1, I believe it's called. It's
Yeah.
it's crazy. They're just and I won't go too into detail, but if you guys want to ask me any questions about it, just feel free to email or message us. But the elements that they're cultivating to work with these have to be shady elements because they're dealing in a shady industry. So we're becoming like an Eastern European mafia state. That's who they're hanging out with. When they went abroad, they were hanging out with all the oligarchs, all the mobsters, all the criminal elements from Eastern Europe.
And is getting them to invest money into those coins, which is a backdoor to the president of the United States.
UAE put $2 billion in it.
Yes. Do you remember when Hillary Clinton was doing the campaign and Saudi Arabia was like investing all of this money into her Hillary Clinton fund?
Yep.
And the moment that she lost, they stopped investing.
Yep.
I guess I'm like, this stuff is so shady. Or Hunter Biden sending a text message to China saying, I'm sitting here with my father and you better give me the $20 million or else. And then when people point out, okay, so how are you telling us that you're not involved in this? I didn't have anything to do with it.
Right.
What do you mean? He's sending a text message saying he's sitting there with you. Were you sitting there with your son or not? I don't know. I don't remember. I'm Joe Biden. This is so corrupt. And this is even worse, by the way, because they're getting money directly into crypto, as you pointed out, a very shady business already, with the notion that my dad is president. And if you invest in my coin, that has nothing to do with my father, by the way. I just need to put that out in all legal documents.
It's a stable US dollar coin. Has nothing to do with the government, though.
Nothing to do with the government. But you give us $2 billion. Hey, maybe we can talk to them on your behalf. Like the notion that you're going to invest that much money into that coin, that Donald Trump is not going to get any part of it, despite the fact that they're your kids. And that it's not going to give you a window into the president, and that they're not investing to get that window into the president. It's outrageous. It's one last thing before I let you go.
Sure.
Rudy Giuliani, John Kiriakou. John Kiriakou has the best stories in the world.
Yeah.
And John Kiriakou was telling me how he was trying to get a pardon. And Rudy Giuliani was going around saying he was selling pardons when Donald Trump was in office. He said that they went out to dinner and they sat there eating for, let's say, like an hour. Nobody brings it up. And John finally was like, okay, can we please talk about the pardon? Giuliani gets up, goes to the bathroom and leaves. And his lawyer says, you talk to me about that, not him. They got it down to a science. Like,
yeah,
it's the way
well,
they
that's New
maneuver.
Yorkers. That's New York mob mentality. They know they at least have their ducks in a row. Trump, we're just dealing with a cockamamie of nonsense. The New York mob has their ducks in a row. The Washington DC mob
they know how to do it. Right. They know how to get around it. Like that, a nanometer outside of the legal system. Sarah, thank you for this. I really do appreciate it. I always enjoy these conversations. Sarah Bils, she is independent journalist, U.S. Navy veteran, co-founder of DD Geopolitics. Check her out on YouTube. Check her out on Twitter. Again, news up to date constantly. They are fantastic.
Have a good weekend, Jamarl.
You too. Enjoy. Be safe. Have a good one. All right. She is great. Always love having her on the show. I kept her too long. I shouldn't have done that. I'm sorry. It wasn't on purpose. But she's fantastic. Either way, though, we have come to the end. We've come to the end. We've always find ourselves in this position, coming to the end. Mr. Riffley, dear America, it's your money, but it's our choice. Love Israel. That's depressing, Mr. Riffley. That's very depressing. I would tell you, let's say that we're wrong, because I have to count the possibility that I'm wrong, which is why when I talk about it, I start with the premise of this is what they are saying. This is what I think. Assuming for the moment that I'm wrong, and this is not a context to attack Israel, like assuming for the moment that this is just on its face what it is. That Trump is annoyed with Netanyahu because Trump feels like Netanyahu is making an asshole out of him. Well, Trump's ego, I could see that, right? That's not shocking per se. Let's say that shallow on its face of it, that Trump is like, I don't have anything to do with you. I'm sick of you. And just to be clear for something, to, give this a little bit more credence, I don't want to be shallow about it. There is, I'm going to call it famous. What is it? Yeah, this one. There is this famous clip because it's one thing to take a political position. It's another thing of what's in your mind. And I know often when I'm talking about political figures, I always say, what is in their mind? I tend to believe that people go towards incentives. And once you know what they want, it gives you a better context to figure out what they're going to do, if that makes sense. Like if you and I are playing a game of chess, we may both agree on reality of something on the board. And if we both agree on the reality of something on the board, then I know what you're going to do. And vice versa, because we agree on the reality of it. If we don't agree on the reality of it, then you have a asymmetry in the way that both of us are playing the game. I'm aiming for one thing, you're aiming for something else. One of us is right and one of us is wrong. And the reality of it is going to play out in the gamble that both of us are putting down by making moves to accomplish our objectives. All right. Politics is different, though. You may say something that you just fundamentally don't believe. You may have a different idea in your head of something, even though you may be doing something else because you have other incentives that are working against you despite what you believe in. Donald Trump, at one point, I don't think he was running for president at this time, said this. And I'm putting this out just to be clear. This clearly, at one point, what is in his mind, regardless of the money that was put into his pocket, regardless of the political entanglements that he may be dealing with now in regards to Israel, this was in his mind.
Both sides, to make a deal, have to want to make it. I have my own views. I want to keep them quiet for a little while because if I ever end up in the midst, that would be a great achievement to get a real peace. And I want to meet with Bibi. I'm going to be probably going over there pretty soon. And I want to see him. I want to see other people. I want to get some ideas on it because, frankly, that has been, and I say it to everybody, that has been the all-time difficult deal. They've been working on it for so many decades. I mean, it just never ends. But the key is a lasting peace. If you have a lasting peace, first thing you have to ask, do they both want to make it? I have a real question as to whether or not both sides wants to make it. I have a real question as to one side in particular, whether or not they want to make it. Well, I don't want to say that right now. I think one side actually would like a deal, and I think the other one maybe doesn't want a deal, to be honest. I don't want to say it. No, look, we show our cards too much in the go. I wrote The Art of the Deal. We show our cards too much. So if I get into that, I don't want to say this and that, and then they'll come and they'll say, well, Trump is biased one way or the other. I think there's a chance that you could probably make a deal if you had a real deal maker, if you had somebody that knew what he or she was doing. In my opinion, if Israel wants to make a deal, I think a deal could be made. I think it will be made at some point. I think if I get elected, that would be something I'd really like to do because so much death, so much turmoil, so much hatred, that would be to me a great achievement. As a single achievement, that would be a really great achievement. I think a lot is going to do with Israel. And look, it's going to have to do with both sides, but a lot will have to do with Israel and whether or not Israel wants to make the deal, whether or not Israel's willing to sacrifice certain things. They may not be, and I understand that, and I'm okay with that, but then you're just not going to have a deal. So we'll see what happens. I'll let you know in about, if I win, I'll let you know 6 months from the time I take office. I will have a very good idea as to whether or not a deal can be made.
Okay, that was not the clip that I
Welcome
wanted.
to Issues of Contemporary Politics with
That was not the clip that I wanted. That was not the clip. God, I want to find this clip. Hold on, give me 1 second. All right. I can't. I don't want. I can't find it on the fly. In the clip, though, the one that I was looking for, I'll find it. Donald Trump said Abbas came across him like a father. And he said he really went into it with one perception, believing that the Palestinians didn't want a deal. And he said he realized that they did want a deal. And he said when he met Netanyahu, he looked at him and said, "You don't want a deal, do you?" And realized that the Israelis did not want a deal, which is the reason why when he's talking in that clip, he's focusing on Israel because he doesn't believe that Israel wanted a deal. So let's assume for the moment that is in his mind. Okay, but again, the political entanglements may push him, and obviously they're pushing him to a different assessment, which is it is okay to starve the Palestinians for whatever political entanglements that Donald Trump is effectively in association with Israel. Let's say his ego, because again, I would put nothing past Trump's ego. He doesn't like it to look like an asshole. And maybe, in this case, and I'm playing devil's advocate, he felt like he was made to look like an asshole. He's made to look as if he's a lapdog for Israel, which elements of MAGA, let's say Marjorie Taylor Greene, Thomas Massey, people who follow that group feel some kind of way about him betraying his base. Let's say that this is just a very shallow version of it. This is not five-dimensional chess, that it is what it is on the face of things. And that he is like, okay, these guys are trying to push me into a war with Israel. I actually want to try to get a deal with Iran. I am going to go ahead with Saudi Arabia. I'm not going to worry about what Israel thinks about this. I'm going to do this thing with the Ansar Allah, where I'm not going to bomb them. They're not going to bomb me. If they want to bomb Israel, God bless them. I don't care anymore. I'm going to get the deal. I'm going to have a conversation with Hamas, and we're going to come to some kind of terms. I'm going to sideline Israel and all of this. That would be astonishing. That would be astonishing. Do I believe it? No. If it is true, oh my God, that's astonishing. Israel will work against him in Congress with its lemmings and other paid jackals that will do everything in their power to prevent any kind of deal from Iran or any kind of deal from Saudi Arabia from being able to put through Congress to become law. They will. They will run ads against Trump. But again, this is Donald Trump's last term, so what does he care, right? I guess my point is, that is one view that some people may have if they're looking at this just on its face. The other view is the view that we articulated, Sarah and I, and for that matter, Laith and I, that this is setting a context by which the U.S. can wipe its hands of things. You must understand why we think that way. It's weird. For a week ago, drunk Hegseth is screeching on Twitter that he's going to bomb Iran at a time of his choosing. Netanyahu is screeching on Twitter, we're going to bomb Iran at a time of its choosing. Donald Trump comparing everything to the Houthis that's associated with Iran. Basically, any attack from the Houthis, it's really Iran that's doing the attack. Okay, that's really strange. Blowing off the negotiations where you're effectively saying, we're not even going to make an appointment for the fourth round of negotiations. And we want the Libyan model, something that was already a red line. Okay, all of these things are stacking up to creating a justification, as I've pointed out for the last several weeks, setting a context to say we are justified in our attack now because of all of these reasons that we have articulated and framed as our lens to which we're going to do this particular attack. And then to even go so far as to argue, like days ago at the ICJ, that it is okay to starve 2 million people. This is even with reporting that pointed out that Trump says, do what you want, giving Israel a free hand by which they're using to slaughter, murder, kill, and starve. So, okay, all of that is one thing. And then a couple of days later, I'm done with Bibi. We're done. I don't have anything to do with them now. Okay, that's a little strange, right? That's a little odd. Like, even if we're wrong, understand the context by which we're looking at it to come to a particular conclusion that this believes this other frame of reference. Again, I could be wrong. I'm just pointing out that this is the lens by which we're looking at it. And then you add in all of these other governments that have been attacked and collapsed over the course of the last 20 years, with Iran being the last one standing, and you look at the people who surround Trump and his administration. That's why we look at it in that way. So this shallow version could be right. It could be what it is on its face. But of course, we're going to be distrustful of it for the reasons I've just articulated. So it's disturbing, but you're right. We give money, weapons, political support. Hell, we even argue that they can starve 2 million people if they want. Our tax dollars is effectively going to that. Yeah, Mr. Riffley, you're right. It's disturbing. Jim Spencer, America's finished. All the roads, bridges, buildings, and streets are broken. You know, that's the wild part. It's almost like we've gotten accustomed to it. Like, let's say something basic, high-speed rail. Have you ever tried to take a train from Richmond to Chicago? You can't do it. I don't even think the tracks go that way. You have to take a bus. If you were in Europe, you can pretty much go all through Europe on train. If you're in China, high-speed rail. If you're in Japan, high-speed rail. In America, there is no high-speed rail. Our trains are a poor imitation of what a train should be, considering it's 2025, and we are the richest country on the planet. And I'm saying that to say, to have that much wealth generated for a country, and yet for that wealth to be occupied in the hands of a small bunch of oligarchs, whereas the government is so kleptocratic that instead of saying, hey, we need to supply healthcare and education, we need to ensure that the kids grow up in a decent environment, decent neighborhoods. We need to ensure that the schools are intact. We need to ensure that they can go to school when they want to, because we want to get the best and brightest, because we have a complicated world and we want the best and brightest to run and deal with that world. We want the best infrastructure. We want the best, et cetera, because we're America. We're the shining city on the hill. That's not the way they think. And you look at somewhere like China, where they put all of this investment into infrastructure and industry and education and medicine and healthcare, et cetera, meaning they're growing their populations. They're growing and investing in their people. If we say that life is value, okay, I agree. But it's one thing to say it. It's another thing to do something to show that you believe it. Those are different things. People can say anything. What you do, it shows what you actually believe in. Somebody would say, if you show me your wallet, I'll show you what you actually believe in. Like, what do you spend money on? If you have like 20% of your thing for weed, it's like, okay, you believe in that. That's what you like to do. But it's the same thing as a government, right? Like, what you invest in on some level gets across your priorities. Are we ensuring that we have safe foods? No. Are we ensuring that, when kids grow up, they're growing up intact, meaning not dirt poor? No. Are we investing in healthcare to ensure that the public, okay, well, we have Medicaid, but they're about to take nearly $1 trillion out of Medicaid. Medicare only covers 80%, which leaves 20%. So if you have a heart attack and you have to spend $100,000, oh my God, you're fucked. Like I'm saying, these are statement of values. If you get my point. I'm not going to think. Jim, I guess I'm agreeing with you. Fantomas Fanta, a great drink. Check out this weekend the government cheese with David Oyelowo. I think I nailed that. surreal, smart family comedy drama series. I think you'll like it. Well, thank you, Phantomas. And one more, Laugh 66. People are missing something. Trump is starting to show signs of cognitive decline himself. I don't remember Trump doing 180s on an hourly basis before. Yeah, but that's because this is a unique situation. If you remember, in the first administration, Donald Trump spent most of his time dealing with Trump and Russia. And so what he did was very limited because he was being caught up in a political scandal. So you had the Mueller investigation. After the Mueller investigation, or let's say you had leaks first, where Comey would go to tell Trump, say, hey, we should keep this between us. But there's a file that said you got a hooker, pee on a bed that Obama slept in because you were very mad at Obama. So got to keep this between us. And then he goes out and leaks it to the press. Like Comey leaks it to the press. And because it's the FBI director who's talking to the president, it immediately becomes a story and a lightning rod. And it changes from a hooker peeing on the bed that Obama was on to Trump got peed on by hooker. And then it became Trump is working with the Russians. And so we need to now investigate Trump. And so you have like a year of an investigation. And then meaning that term was spent dealing with political fires left and right, which limited Trump's ability to do somewhat anything. He had a hard time getting in people in his administration. So he ended up with like just lunatics, whack jobs like John Bolton, Pompeo, just psychopaths, and incompetent psychopaths at that. And so he was limited in what he could ultimately do. In this term, he has clear ideas and is setting fires all around the world with people like Navarro, Bensett, Hegseth, like these people who are basically just yes men. And Trump is like, well, I'm going to make a deal with Russia. I'm going to make a deal with Iran. I'm going to have a tariff war. I'm going to bomb Yemen. Okay, well, these are like 20 different things that you're doing all at once. You're hyperactive, but you're not getting anything really accomplished. I'm going to deport all of these people. I'm going to send somebody to a prison in a country that they don't belong in. All of these things are things that you have to deal with all at once. And so the moment that the press comes and asks you a question, okay, well, you need to have an answer for all of these things. Whereas beforehand, you were dealing with something where he was dealing with a singular item. I hope you get my point. It's different. What he's doing in this administration is so hyperactive that you're now being able to see how incompetent Trump is because he has to answer questions on all of these things. That is a different situation than what he was in the first time around. It's just, I'll give an example. Do you remember, I don't know if you've seen True Blood. So, fantastic series, HBO. Sookie in the first series, in the first season, I can't think of the guy's name, but he used to be a shapeshifter and he used to pretend to be a dog. So he used to ship as a dog and he would hang around Sookie and everything else. And he was seen as, oh, this nice guy. He's harmless. He's in love with Sookie, but she doesn't love him back, etc. Then in the second season, they show backstory where he murders a guy and throws him in a lake. And you're like, oh my God. It's like, what the fuck? He just murdered a guy, threw him in a river. Okay, well, same guy. No difference. Same person, same character. The only difference is you've exposed part of his life that just wasn't there before for you to see. Nothing has changed in the guy. The only thing that's changed is your perception of that guy because you've seen more of that guy. It's the same thing with Trump. Same guy. Your perception is widened because of everything that he's effectively going through in this particular administration and all the fires he's been setting around the globe and all the things that he's, set for himself to do. It's not. If you want to call it cognitive decline, fair enough. But if that's the case, it was there the first time too. You just didn't get to see it. All right. We have come to the end. We've come to the end. I want to give a shout out to my chat. We had a damn good chat today. And again, we didn't have a horse, and yet we had a damn good chat. And by horse, I just mean there's some people who come on who are lightning rods. Well, Laith is kind of a horse. And so is Carl Shaw. I just mean like people who are lightning rods. Like when they come on, the numbers stack up very quickly because people are so interested in seeing them. For me, when we don't have a horse like that, and we still hit 700, 800, it means we're doing something right. Like I said, Carl, Laith, kind of horses. Sarah, also, people love her. I mean, we hit 720, 730 with her being here too. Shout out to everybody. I appreciate all of them for coming on. Arnaud, I love his analysis. He's in Moscow, so he can see the Russian perspective as it happens. Yeah. I want to say shout out to my chat. Cincy, I love all you guys. Thank you for that. Lisa Halt, thanks, Jamal. Have a good weekend. Back at you, Lisa Halt. Arcane Eclectic, thanks, Jamal. Have a good weekend. Everyone, see back at you. Choosy Heretica chooses Carnation Revolution now. Mr. Thomas tour train is huge. Charles G, Private Maniac, that's an interesting metaphor. Hey Jamal, get Mary Trump on your show one day, please. Who is Mary Trump? Spider Hand. I don't know who Mary Trump is. I'll look her up, but I don't know who she is. Is she related to Donald Trump in any particular way? Let's keep going. Region 9, shout out to you. Marvin Brando. Let's be honest, countries like Iran are funny. They try to get an agreement with the United States after all of these years. I know, right? Like they had a revolution. The United States never forgave them for overthrowing the Shah that the United States put in and overthrow the Iranian government because they wanted oil with the Brits in the UK. I mean, Brits in the US. Murdered Soleimani, blew off the JCPOA. And it's like, okay, now let's make a deal. Yeah. Arlene Chambers, love True Blood. I love True Blood too. Arlene Chambers, especially the first few seasons. I used to love it when Suki would be in her white dress and she'd go running through the night. Oh, I used to love that. There's something awesome about that scene. I'm a sucker for art stuff like that. She would have this completely white flowing dress on at like 1 a.m. And she'd go to the cemetery looking for Bill. I used to love Bill Compton. That accent was fantastic. And she would go running with her arms wide, if I remember it right, just running through the forest, running through the night, running through the cemetery. And then she couldn't find Bill. And Bill would crawl out of the grave and make love to her right there in the dirt on the cemetery. Oh, it was so good. It was so good. It was so good. It was so good. Darth X, Charles G, Cherie, Peter Burns. I think this is Wendy, Skeptical Jerk, Richard Mayer, Marvin, again, Kylie, Griot Channel, Friendu, all of you. Thank you for joining me. And thank for all of you for donating also. They have started demonetizing these videos again out of the blue for whatever particular reason, putting Ibrahim Traore in the title. Somehow they got demonetized. They demonetized the other video the other day. So you support and pay for this content. I appreciate you for doing so. Thank you very much. And by the way, for the remainder of the people who are here, you can support through PayPal, Patreon, Super Chat, CashApp, I'm at it. And of course, memberships and all those things. All of those things help the show. All of those things are deeply, deeply appreciated. Keep the show, keep going. And I appreciate you for doing so. So I'm going to end it here. You guys have a fantastic weekend. Jamal Thomas Morning Show, episode 151. Signing off.